Hello, everyone, and welcome to Picture This, and the final time I will be talking about the 2021 movies on my channel. I feel like I've been talking about them for so long because this has been one of the longest award seasons ever, just like last year. Co-host Chad Webb here. How you doing, Chad?
Hey, I'm doing really great. This year was really good for movies, I think. I had a really great time. 2021, not this year we're currently in. But 2021 was great. I loved a lot of movies. I have a lot that I loved that we're going to talk about today, and then I have a lot that I love that we're going to have honorable mentions about. So
yeah, and like Chad said, we have honorable mentions for the show because we want to recognize all the films of that year, but we will shoehorn in on the 10 nominees of course, the 2021 slate of movies for the 2022 Oscars. Those films are, and let me try to do this on the top of my brain alphabetically. I'm going to try to make it through. Belfast, CODA, Don't Look Up, Drive My Car, Dune, King Richard, Licorice Pizza, Nightmare Alley, Power of the Dog, and West Side Story. I think I did it in the right order. I might have gotten those three titles with the D's confused.
I think you did it perfectly, actually.
Well, there you go.
Good job.
And of course we can refer to it as Dune or Dune Part 1. I know some people are very up in arms about that. That is fine as well. And then West Side Story is obviously West Side Story 2021 because there are multiple of those. But we'll get there when we get there. Great crop of movies. Some good, some great. And we will talk about them in just a sec. But before we do, not only is this a special episode because the Oscars just happened and we're going to be talking about all that stuff, but it is also our 12 episode anniversary, aka our 1 year anniversary doing this show. And it has been such a journey. I mean, we started this doing 1994 with Forrest Gump, Shawshank, Pulp Fiction, and that was just us starting out. And to see how the show's grown, see how many people have seen it, some people have guested on it, one person in particular, and we have several ideas lined up down the way of how to grow the show and stuff. It's been really nice. So I just want to take a trip down memory lane, and this is what I would like to call our Picture This Hall of Fame. So first, all the names, there are two slides of this for all the people that have ever been awarded Best Actor or Actress on our show. I'm not going to read them all out, but those are all them. The star next to them means that they actually won the Oscar that year. I just put in the ones from 1967, so I forgot to put a little star next to Sidney Poitier, but those are the Oscars, the Oscar winners with the little star next to them. The rest are ones that either were not nominated or were nominated but didn't win that we chose as our picks. The very left column is my picks for Best Actor. The next column is Chad's pick for Best Actor. The next, my picks for Best Actress, and Chad's for Best Actress all the way on the right. And then the two at the bottom are our guest Dan's picks when we did 1980. And then this slide is the rest of them. From left to right, my picks, Chad's picks, my picks, Chad's picks, and of course the stars denote the winners. Really, really good crop of actors and actresses for all those shows. And Sidney Poitier, the only person to win two Picture This Best Actor or Actress prizes. So maybe that'll change today. Who knows? Because there are some repeat names in here that were on in some of these movies. So we'll find out. And then another trip down memory lane. These are all our Best Picture winners for Picture This. These are the movies that we have awarded Best Picture to. What we do at the end of the show is we take all the nominees for that episode, we rank them, and whichever one has the closest commonality toward the top of our list will be our winners. So I will say these ones because it's only 12 titles, but 1939, our winner was The Wizard of Oz. In 1944, our winner was Double Indemnity. In 1947, our winner was Miracle on 34th Street. 1961, it was Judgment at Nuremberg. At 1967, it was The Graduate. 1974, I believe, or 1973, The Sting. 1975, Jaws. 1980 was The Elephant Man, and Dan Skip Allen helped us pick that winner as well. 1994, our first show was Shawshank Redemption. 2007, There Will Be Blood. 2011, Moneyball. And just last year, 2020, was Nomadland. And 2021, we will have a winner crowned tonight that will join those 12 as our 13th Best Picture among the two of us on Picture This. So a really great trip down memory lane. It was nice to see just how much our show has grown, just to see all those names and all those posters, just knowing that we did I think we did a pretty good job, Chad.
I was just about to say, looking at that list of movies and names that you had up there,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we did pretty well.
Yeah. So how the show works, we do go through all the movies, and then at the end we do award a Best Actor and Actress each. They do not have to be nominees, but they have to be from those 10 movies. And then, of course, as I said, with the ranking process, we pick our number one. That becomes our Best Picture for the show. But before we do that, we do like to go through all the ins and outs of the year itself to set the scene and set the mood, especially because a lot of these movies play better in historical context or worse in historical context. Gone with the Wind. And some of these films, because we're in this pandemic era, I think it's important to talk about the times of 2021, and we will talk about some notable moments, people, and losses of 2021 as well. So, Chad, tell us about the year of 2021, any memorable deaths, losses, and of course, deaths and losses are the same thing. Births, which I don't know if there's any notable births, and then maybe even some albums, music, or anything notable about 2021 to just set the scene for anyone who can't remember what happened 3 months ago.
Absolutely. Well, I tried to keep some of this pretty short because I know we got a lot of movies to discuss today. But yeah, for the history of 2021, we just lived through it. The International Year of Peace and Trust, Creative Economy for Sustainable Development, Fruits and Vegetables, and the elimination of child labor declared by the United Nations.
Good.
COVID persisted, but started to get a little better with hiccups along the way. There was an insurrection event in D.C. on January 6th. That was insane. That was an insane start to the year.
Yeah.
Joe Biden became president. That was pretty good, I thought.
Yeah.
I don't know who you are, but maybe you might not like that. Maybe you do. First direct observation of light from behind a black hole is reported, which confirmed Einstein's theory of general relativity. Relativity.
You got it.
I got it. Nailed it. Hurricane Ida hits New Orleans.
That's right.
It's New Orleans. Those people just can't catch a break, can they? The United States announced a diplomatic boycott of the Winter Olympics because of China's human rights record. I still watched them, though, but I didn't feel good about it. Okay, no, I actually enjoyed them. But
yeah. Great. Yeah, a really eventful year, 2021. Yeah.
Yep. So for births, we just have one that I found was kind of notable. Lilibet Mountbatten Windsor, second child of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I forgot that was so recent. And any unfortunate deaths, obviously.
There's
that we have to
a
mention.
few deaths, and I apologize if I'm missing anybody, but I think I got a lot of the ones that were notable to me.
And especially more recently, it gets harder the more closer we get to modern day, because there's just so many more people, unfortunately, that are being more famous, and that results in So.
Absolutely. So we have Michael Apted, Hank Aaron, Larry King, Hal Holbrook, Christopher Plummer, Jessica Walter, DMX, Ned Beatty, John McAfee, thank you for the security, Richard Donner, Donald Rumsfeld, Don Everly, Ed Asner, Norm MacDonald, Colin Powell, Leslie Brissussi, the composer for 1967's Dr. Dolittle, and other films. Wow. Dean Stockwell, Stephen Sondheim, and Betty White.
Yeah, very, very sad. Events all around, especially some of them that are too young when they pass. It's always unfortunate, but also some legends that even though they were older, it still doesn't hit you sometimes. Like Betty White, there was always that thing like, oh, is Betty White just going to live forever? It's very unfortunate, but yeah. Any other notable things about 2021?
Right at the end of the year. And you thought maybe she might make it, and unfortunately, nope.
So sad.
Your time is your time, I guess. But anyways, music. On a lighter note, music. For the First Time by Black Country New Road, Sometimes I Might Be Introverted by Little Sims, Okay Human by Weezer, Call Me If You Get Lost by Tyler, the Creator, Promises by Floating Points, Pharoah Sanders and the London, Cavalcade by Black Midi, Bright Green Field by Squid, Jubilee by Japanese Breakfast, Hey What by Low, By the time I get to Phoenix by Injury Reserve, I Don't Live Here Anymore by The War on Drugs, A Beginner's Mind by Sufjan Stevens and Angelo De Augustine. Um, Apologize for this one, but God's Pee at State's End by Godspeed You, Black Emperor.
Cool.
They
Yeah.
name albums anything these days.
Yeah, is that all the albums you got?
That's so far, yeah. And I haven't heard most
Cool.
of them, but
Yeah, I was gonna say there's one more I'm gonna add to it, and that is the Encanto soundtrack, because that plays all the time, everywhere I go. And I guess that segues us to our next list, which is the list of movies that we feel should have been honored either in Best Picture or just mentioned as notable movies of the year, because obviously, we're only talking about 10 movies, but this is our chance to give us some honorable mentions, and Encanto is one of mine. But Chad, what is your list of honorable mentions for great movies of 2021 that you think you want to bring up?
well, I'm glad you mentioned Encanto because this was a great year for just music, soundtracks, a lot of stuff in
Yeah,
film,
the year of the
and I had a
musical.
great,
We
great,
got
great time with those. But
we
yeah,
got a
so I
bunch of them.
have notable films, and this one I could probably actually throw it into Best Picture worthy, but it was kind of an ineligible thing. But Bo Burnham's Inside, absolutely
Mm-hmm.
love that one. He's a huge Bo Burnham fan. The Sparks Brothers, Titan, A Quiet Place Part Two, Zack Snyder's Justice League, Oxygen, Bad Trip, Nobody, Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar, Raya and the Last Dragon, Encanto, the Fear Street trilogy, The Green Knight, Free Guy, Cruella, The Suicide Squad, Malignant, The Night House, Candyman, The Card Counter, Lamb, The French Dispatch, The Lost Daughter, The Matrix Resurrections, Ghostbusters Afterlife, The Eyes of Tammy Faye. And then I have Best Picture worthy. I have Spencer, Tick Tick Boom, Spider Man No Way Home. Yes, I said Spider Man No Way Home. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Pig. I did that for Stacey.
Pig,
Pig.
pig.
Uh, Last Night in Soho, In the Heights, The Mitchells versus the Machines. That's all I wrote down, but I know there's a ton
Yeah,
I'm probably
there's so
forgetting.
many, and I don't even want to pull out a list because Chad got so many of them, and there are some that obviously we didn't mention and we're not going to mention, but a lot of great movies this year, especially like you said from musicals. I mean, we got like so many good musicals that the musical category of the Golden Globes, which is usually dominated by comedies and maybe one or two musicals, was all musicals and like one comedy, which was Licorice Pizza. But it was like, West Side Story, Tick Tick Boom, Cyrano, In the Heights. We also got Annette and Dear Evan Hansen, which some people don't like. I liked, but yeah, Vivo, Encanto. Everybody's talking about Jamie. Like so many musicals, and I think that's just like my biggest win for the year. Like if I had to put like a top 10 list of the greatest parts of 2021, number one would be all the great movie musicals we got. I just wanted to shout that out. But now let's talk about the ceremony. Oh,
I
sorry.
was
Go
just
ahead.
going to say, even Coda's kind of a musical in a way.
CODA,
So.
yeah, it's a
We'll get
musically
there.
driven film, yeah. But yeah, so let's talk about the ceremony. I don't want to go on too long, so I'll give us like maybe like 8 minutes to just kind of tackle this ceremony. First, I just want to bring up the precursor chart, just because it's always fun to see who the front runners were, and this was definitely an anomaly of a year, only because in terms of stats. You look at the stats, you see who has all the nominations. Power of the Dog had the most nominations of the night. It collected the award at Critics' Choice, like you see here, Golden Globe for drama, and the BAFTA, but it lost the PGA, and that was to CODA. Now, all the time, you can't just say the PGA winner is going to win Best Picture, just like you can't say the Critics' Choice or the BAFTA is going to win Best Picture. But usually you kind of look at who's been winning the most of those. And Drive My Car also has 3 there, but those are in international. That's what the little globe is. But it really was CODA versus Power of the Dog. And a lot of people were thinking it would be Power of the Dog, myself included, only because of the amount of nominations, 14 to CODA's 3. And then, of course, the amount of wins. It wins 3 of these huge award shows, and CODA only wins 1 of them. And it's even snubbed at the BAFTA, which usually, I think 12 times out of 12 since this preferential ballot system started, which is basically where they extended 5 nominees to 6 to 10 nominees, the BAFTA has always at least nominated the winner, and CODA here, not even nominated. So it was definitely an anomaly in terms of CODA just jumping so many stats, being the first Best Picture winner in a long, long time to win without editing or director nominations, and I believe the first nominee ever maybe to win without both a directing and or editing nomination. So really, really great to see the hurdles that CODA jumped. And I think this kind of goes back to the idea of award season being longer now. They used to happen earlier in March or late February. The fact that we're now getting in late March, that's a whole nother month. and that's just longer time for people to build campaigns. And Apple built that campaign because you really see CODA doesn't become a frontrunner except for the last like 2 or 3 weeks of award season. And I think that's just kind of the trend we're seeing is that as the award seasons get longer and longer, the 1917s lose to the small little parasites. And then, the Nomadland's different because it was winning everything this season. But again, this year, Power of the Dog starts winning, loses momentum. CODA gains momentum at the right time. Sometimes that's just what happens with the Oscar race, especially in this new day and age where the Oscar season's longer. But the actual ceremony itself, aside from the CODA moment of winning Best Picture, I mean, there were some surprises. I think the actual winners of the awards were fairly predictable this year, but I think a lot of the surprises came in a lot of the moments throughout, specifically one, which we'll talk about. But Chad, did you like the Oscar ceremony? I know some people, a majority of people are saying it's not one of the greatest ones, and I agree with that. But would you put it on the pedestal of the worst along with last year's? Because last year's, we all admit, was really, really bad. The way it ended with, the Best Actor blunder and, just the way it was structured, and obviously everyone wearing masks and having to socially distance, and there just being like a lack of energy in the room because of that, even though it was safe. What do you think of this Oscar ceremony?
Well, I mean, I'm kind of an interesting case here because, I don't have like a seasoned, like, tradition of watching the Oscars for like a very long time.
Hmm.
I started watching maybe a few years ago. And yeah, so I remember, and I've seen bits of like older Oscar ceremonies. And I
Hmm.
think I used to watch them like as a kid a little bit, but like
Yeah.
not much. I used to watch more like MTV Movie Awards and stuff
Yeah.
like
Oh,
that.
they were
But
the
yeah,
best.
like, right. But like, these days, I'm getting more into like film criticism, doing the show with you, just trying to really like engage with the Oscar season. And so for me, um, outside of the ceremony was like my favorite part, to actually try to learn to do like what you do really well, and like research and like
Yeah.
figure
Look
out
at
what
trends and
it's just
stats and stuff like that. Yeah.
just really fun. And I think I was at almost a little bit of an advantage because you've been doing this so long. You've been like, you just like so stat minded. And me, I'm like, maybe this could do it. And you're like, no way. And then I'm like, maybe.
There's
And
always a
then it
way.
did.
Yeah, it's the great optimism about you, Chad. But
But,
yeah. So in terms of big moments, I mean, we got some
well,
big musical numbers, which were for the most part pretty good. But then the slap is the biggest moment leaving the night, and I think it's really interesting to talk about because when you look back at Oscars history, most of the things that make you remember the Oscars are the wins or the upsets. But this was something totally
mhm.
unrelated to anyone winning. Um, and I just want to ask, like, what do you feel about that moment? And in terms of like, do you think this is what the Oscars should be remembered for, or do you think it should be remembered for like the historic wins of the CODA team winning and Ariana DeBose being the first openly queer black woman to win an award, like stuff like that. What are your opinions on that?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'll say like my overall feelings of the ceremony is that yeah, it definitely could have been way better.
Hmm.
They could have made so many great decisions. I think first and foremost, if you're gonna nominate people for awards, treat them all equally.
Yeah.
Stop doing this thing where you throw some people off to the side and go, "You're not as important as these
Hmm.
awards."
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you nominate people, you have them all in the ceremony, and stop
Hmm.
this picking and choose, especially if you're going to spend a lot of time doing advertisement and other stuff.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people didn't like the comedy bits a lot and stuff.
Hmm.
I think they're fine. Humor subjective,
Yeah.
but
I kind of like the idea of laughing kind of at Hollywood itself. Like I saw The Last Duel. I liked The Last Duel, but I laughed a lot when they made a joke about no one seeing The Last Duel. I also think
right.
I think when it's direct celebrity digs, I think you just have to kind of know who the right person to dig at is and who's going to take the humor better. Like saying that Timothy Chalamet turned into J.K. Simmons is hilarious, but then
Yeah,
saying that Kirsten Dunst is merely there to just fill the seat of someone else and having to kick her out of her chair to sit and flirt with Jesse. Like that was a weird moment. Like
yeah,
there's just some weird moments. And just like you said, overall ABC trying to make the Oscars something that no one really wants. And that's like, you know, we want to see the people win and we want to see a celebration of movies. And some of the bits just felt like more of an advertisement for Disney and Hulu and like their new brands and all that stuff to where like,
yeah.
even when CODA won, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot CODA was even nominated. Like, because there was just so
Hmm.
much attention put on, Spider-Man and King Richard and Eyes of Tammy Faye. And I thought it was also very funny that they
Hmm.
did a bit about Tammy Faye and King Richard, just basically kind of showing their hand, like, oh, this is who's going to win Best Actor and Actress. Yeah, it was just
Right.
a weirdly designed show. I wish there was more attention put on the awards themselves. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, it can be done right when you
Hmm.
can throw in comedy and make it
Yeah.
fun. You can actually do that and it'd be good. I mean, I love when is it the Golden Globes or whatever that has like
Yeah.
Ricky Gervais come in and
Yeah, yeah,
do his
and
stuff?
it's
He's
really cringy but
hilarious.
funny. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
like
it's
you're
like
like, "Oh, I feel bad for them," but I'm also like, "But that was funny."
yeah,
Yeah.
and it turns almost into a roast, and I think that's probably what Chris Rock was trying to do,
Mhm.
was
Yeah.
just trying to make it a little edgy, little
Mhm.
roasty, like,
Yeah.
pep up the thing, but yeah,
Yeah,
he
and
did
I
it to
also
the
think
wrong people.
yeah, he did it to the wrong people. I agree. Like, I think
Mhm,
there's something to say about making a joke about someone, but then making it about their appearance is kind of like a strike one. Making it about a
mhm,
black woman's hair is another strike because you hear so much in media, and
yeah,
it's becoming more of a talked about theme in media and culture. Just acknowledgement of hair and just the different cultures of different races and understanding other people's processes and the way they see
yeah.
themselves even and why that can be a sensitive topic for women of color. So
Yeah,
I think that was a problem.
didn't somebody before, like, comment on, like, Zendaya's hair, like, a couple years ago or something like that?
Maybe,
And it
yeah,
was
yeah. I think it's just
yeah, it's
using appearances, unless it's like someone is purposely dressed crazy, or like someone said, "Hey, Timothy Chalamet, put a shirt
right,
on," like that would have been something because he wasn't wearing one. But
right,
like I think like something like that is okay. But then when you bring it about someone's like actual appearance that they can't change, because you can change your
yeah,
clothes, but you can't really change the fact that like Jada Pinkett Smith has alopecia and like
right.
struggles with that and has openly vocally said that. So yeah, obviously Chris Rock in the wrong, but also Will Smith in the wrong for making it violent when you're on a
Very
broadcast
much
and
so,
you're the
yeah.
favorite to win an award. Also, you're. I mean, nothing's a lock as you always say, but it's like it was pretty much certain that he was going to win. So
Yeah,
it's like
right.
one of those things where it's like you got to make sure your camera's rolling on you, and you just got to make sure to pick your battles and choose your battles and when to get verbal, when to get physical, and it was memorable. I'll tell you that. Like it's going to be remembered forever. It surpassed Kanye and Taylor. It surpassed La La Land,
Oh,
Moonlight for
yeah.
me in terms of most talked about, most memed about.
I mean, it was so insane, this
Yeah,
moment, that myself included, a lot of people thought this was a bit, like, probably written by Chris
yeah,
Rock, like, from his
mm-hmm,
Pootie Tang days or something like
mm-hmm.
that, where he's like, "Hey, how about I say this about Jada, you come up, slap the shit out of me," because, even right after that happened, that's what he says is, "Will Smith
Yeah.
just slapped the shit out of me."
Yeah,
And,
because he has to just play it cool because and good for him for not like because I would have fallen over. I would have just been like, "Get me out of here," but he was just like, "That just happened." Like he was a good sport about
yeah,
it at least,
and
even
then
though I think they
it
both
was,
fucked
like,
up.
awkward right after that, and it's just like even like in an
Mhm.
interview with the John Leguizamo, like he was basically saying that everyone in the crowd thought it was a bit for a minute
Yeah,
because
yeah,
when he was going up to him, Chris was like, "Oh, here we go, he's coming up," and then he gets slapped, and then awkward, and then I'm
yeah.
like, that
It was
cringe is
awkward.
hard to
Awkward is the
deal
perfect
with.
word. Awkward is the
Yeah,
perfect word. And I honestly felt like it was a disservice for all the awards afterwards because right after that, Questlove wins for Summer of Soul, and it's supposed to be this iconic moment about such a historic event that is criminally underseen by Americans in
yeah,
general, especially people who aren't of color. And that moment felt gypped, and then even Will Smith's moment, like that was a moment he probably has
yeah,
dreamed about has now it has to become an apology speech more so than an actual speech about just
yeah,
like the team and stuff. And he tried to blend them all together, but it's like
yeah,
it's very hard to be proud of yourself and be happy in the moment and accept an award while also having to
yeah,
make an apology because someone told you to or someone recommended for it to, or even if he felt it in his heart to apologize. But like it's very hard when that's thrown for a loop when everyone's like practiced their speeches over and over in their head, like they know what they're
yeah,
probably going to say. um Jessica
yeah. It's
Chastain
definitely
wins her first Oscar. That moment doesn't, have as much weight because everyone's just thinking, "Oh, best actor's next, best
yeah,
actor's next," and it's a shame because these people that have spent their whole careers waiting to get Oscars, even those who we don't know much about because they're like breakout stars like Ariana DeBose or Troy Kotzer, they still have been building their careers for a long time. Ariana DeBose
yeah.
started as the bullet in Hamilton. She was the one who pulled the bullet
Oh
across the
yeah,
stage,
yep,
and now she's an Oscar winner. And it's just like I'm glad that happened early in the night, but yeah, I hope this award ceremony isn't looked at as the award ceremony where someone got slapped. It probably will,
yeah.
but I hope it's looked at as the award ceremony where this movie that premiered at Sundance that didn't have anyone backing it that got bought by Apple in Apple's first ever Best Picture campaign ended up being The Little Engine That Could. And Jane Campion, who lost to Steven Spielberg all the way in 1993 when he made Schindler's List, finally gets her due against Steven Spielberg for her movie. And
Right.
Steven Spielberg's there applauding her. Like, those are the moments we should remember. And I
Yeah.
sadly do
Well,
not think those are going to be as celebrated as obviously this iconic memeable moment. You know what I mean?
Well, I will say there's a lot of ceremonies that have things happen like this. It's like a, oh
Hmm.
my God. I think this is the biggest one of them because it actually included violence.
Right.
But we still talk about the winner, La La Land. I mean Moonlight. We still make that
Yeah.
joke and stuff like that
It's
years
amazing. Yeah.
later. But we still talk about like a lot of the movies, I think, and how
True.
sweet some of the
Mhm.
award winners were. Like I still loved seeing Troy Kutzer's speech. That was pretty
Yeah.
iconic.
And Yo Jong Yoon trying to
That was so
not knowing that
adorable.
she had to step away and she was just standing there because she wanted to hold the Oscar because she wanted him to be able to sign and she was just like literally right over
Exactly.
his shoulder and he was just kind of like okay, okay. It was
Yeah.
very sweet.
And
It was
then
very, very sweet.
and then Questlove, basically tearing up about like
Yeah.
wanting his dad to be there. That was really
Hmm.
sweet,
Really,
sad,
really nice. Yeah.
bittersweet moment.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great moments, a lot of great outfits. I really like Kristen Stewart's. She wore shorts.
Yeah.
Um,
Kristen Stewart wore shorts. Timothy Chalamet didn't wear a shirt. Like everyone was going, they were pretty ballsy this year. Just really, really going for it. And some paid
I
off,
heard a
some didn't.
lot of cleavage too. Apparently, people were
Yeah,
talking about.
well, that's every year. I mean, we remember the moment where Jeremy Renner presented the globes with Jennifer Lopez
That's
and made
right.
a comment about her globes. Um, anyway, we've talked for 26 minutes now. Let's finally get to these nominees because there are a lot of good ones. And we're gonna start off with one that won one award. A lot of these awards, a lot of these movies didn't win a ton, but almost everything picked up something. And that is Belfast. Kenneth Branagh finally won his Oscar. I believe he's he's the most nominated across categories of any person ever. He's been nominated for picture for producing Belfast. He's been nominated for director a few times. He's been nominated for original screenplay, adapted screenplay, actor, supporting actor, best short film, and I believe there was one other thing. I don't know if he, shot something cinematography wise. I don't remember, but he's I think the most nominated across categories. So that was pretty cool to see him win. But tell us, Chad,
Definitely.
about Belfast.
Well deserved, I have to say. Belfast, directed by, is he Sir Kenneth Branagh?
He might be. Let's say he is. Why not? We can
Directed
knight
by
him.
Sir
If he's
Kenneth
not,
Branagh.
he is now.
We knight you, Kenneth Branagh. Sir Kenneth Branagh, written by Sir Kenneth Branagh. Cinematography by Harris Zimbarlokos. Apologies. Music by the great Van Morrison. Starring, uh, is it Katrina?
um,
Katriana? Balfe? Katrina Balfe?
I've heard it both
Dame
ways.
Dame Judi Dench, Jamie Dornan, Kieran Hines, Colin Morgan, Josie Walker, and Jude Hill. Synopsis: a young boy grows up in Belfast, Northern Ireland, in the midst of a religious civil war in Northern Ireland called the Troubles in 1969.
Hmm. So going into this, I didn't know much about the Troubles. I obviously didn't know much about the area of Belfast and all that stuff. So I was going in just kind of knowing this is like Kenneth Branagh's interpretation of his own childhood, and that's all I
Yeah.
kind of knew going into this. So Chad, I know you like this movie, and because you've told me, and I know your wife loves this movie. I think it was her favorite of the year. So like, just tell me your thoughts on Belfast and what clicked so well for you and what made it so impactful.
Yeah. I gotta say this is my wife's absolute favorite movie of last year. She got so excited when he won and cheered and all that. That was pretty sweet. But yeah, we saw this in the theater. We didn't know much about it. I knew it was like in black and white. It had like Van Morrison music. Was directed by Kenneth Branagh, and I was just kind of excited to see it. I know like Jamie Dornan has been kind of getting in some good stuff. He was really good in Barb and Star and
He
stuff
was,
like that. So
yeah.
yeah, so I was excited to see him in it, and just other people that were in it. And I really liked the idea of it focusing on the little kid.
Hmm.
Because we have a lot of like kind of like war movies. This one's not crazy like a war movie. It's more about family and just trying to make it in this time where war is happening and
Hmm.
trying to keep your family together, trying to keep them safe and happy. And I think there's just a lot of great themes, but they also, not only that, they just focus on like this kid, I guess Kenneth Branagh's likeness, this kid trying to figure out like, what the heck from a kid's mind, you're like, I don't understand. How do you even tell if someone's a Catholic or a Protestant? Like,
Yeah.
how do you even tell? Like, what's the
Hmm.
big deal? And from a kid, it all seems so ridiculous what everybody's
Hmm.
fighting over. And it is ridiculous, but we get it all wrapped up in our head that this is insanely important and we're just different. We can't get along and we can't come together because we're just different. And so we're going to
Yeah.
fight about it and actually cause
Mm.
mayhem. And that's what kind of happens in this movie. They don't go overboard with it. I like that. I like that
Okay.
they keep it pretty sweet and they
Hmm.
focus on the family dynamics and, just all the drama with that. I love the grandparents in the
Yeah.
thing. They just really kind of grounded it. That Jude basically gets to you listening like you want to say something, Bill.
Well, you brought up the grandparents, and I do agree. I think the
Okay.
grandparents are you know this movie, like you said, it's very very sweet and it's very cute. Like it's very sweet, and I think sometimes it gets a little too tame with all the
Mhm.
tough difficult stuff that's going on. But you make a good point. Like we are seeing it from the kids' perspective, and I think that's why the moments that are more rooted in the drama of the politics and the war and the troubles and the like parents isn't as strong for me as the stuff with the grandparents, because the stuff with the grandparents just kind of feels like a coming of age about growing up and being a child. And I think I like those moments better. And my hot take, and I told you I had a hot take going into
Yeah.
this, I think Judi Dench is more deserving of the nomination than Katrina Balfe. And I know that is a hot take because everyone was like, Katrina Balfe got snubbed. And I even too was surprised. But watching
Mhm.
this again, I was like, the most charming moments of this for me are the moments where Buddy's just, his name is Buddy, right?
Yes.
Learning how
Yep.
to just like be a kid and like just having all these great experiences that you take for granted when you're older. Like the scene where they're in the movie theater is like
Yes.
the few scenes where they're in the theaters just really really resonate with me because it's like as an adult now, I wish I could go back and just like savor the moment of being in the movie theater for the first time even more
Yeah.
and just experience that again. But I think the beauty about Judi Dench's performance is that she is older, she's grown up, but now Belfast is changing so much that she's almost experiencing it for the first time like Buddy is. There's just a gap of 60, 70 years, but they are both experiencing the same things for the first time at the same time. And it's really great to see that parallel of, old versus young, but still experiencing the same things through the same eyes at the same time. And seeing her watch Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and kind of get startled when the car comes out. And this is before 3D, obviously. This is just colored movies. And just seeing her reactions, like those are the moments that make me really choke up and make me really happy and really resonate with me. The everlasting love sequence with Jamie Dornan. I think Jamie Dornan gives my favorite performance in this film. I think he's really good at playing like the father who has to kind of stand up for the family and be like the stoic strongman, but then just seeing him like have those more fun moments like everlasting love with his wife. And a Jamie Dornan musical number is always just bound to like move every movie up a half a star for me just because he really commits. Barman Star is another example of a great Jamie
Mhm.
Dornan musical number. But
Open up your eyes, then you realize here I stand with my everlasting love.
I'll admit, like, I don't love this movie as much as you, obviously, but because I do think it gets a little too, I don't want to say safe, but it becomes a little bit more generic and pedestrian in terms of just the way it's presented at times. But the moments where they really decide to focus on his childhood and, like, him trying to ask out that girl and seek his grandparents' advice, like, that stuff is what I kind of wish the whole movie was. I know, obviously, they have to touch on, like, the troubles and the darkness and stuff, but, like, I think obviously when you're looking through it from a child's lens, it's not going to have the same weight and gravity as Saving Private Ryan, and it's not supposed to. But I think for me, those moments where they're like at the theater and then on the bus talking to his grandma, and just even at the end where Judi Dench is looking at the camera and her second best breaking of the fourth wall since Cats, I really do like those moments a lot, and I do think
Mhm.
Dame Judi Dench, even though she wasn't my favorite in the category, I think she was deserving of that nomination. I really do. I really like that nomination because it kind of came out of left field. But when I was watching it, I was like, she really has some really powerful moments in this thing.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think everybody in the movie is so great.
Yeah, it's a good
Jamie
ensemble.
Dornan, I didn't like as much the first time, but the second time watching this, I
Hmm.
liked a lot more. I think he gives
Yeah.
like one of the greatest quotes. It's like
Mm.
towards the end, it's that wee girl can be practicing Hindu or a Southern Baptist or a vegetarian Antichrist, But if she's kind and she's fair and you two respect each other, she and her people are welcome at our house any day of the week. And I think that basically sums up the entire movie. Is it's like a kid in this backdrop of the war trying to figure out the war and trying to figure out his place. And then the family's also trying to do the same thing where, Katrina's character is basically wondering if they should stay because this is all they know. This is where they grew up. Everyone knows them. Everyone's going to take care of their kids because everybody loves their kids just like they do. And then she realizes their home is not the same that they once knew. And, they have other lines where the one that I also love is if they can't understand you, then they're not listening. And that's their problem. And I believe that's Kieran Hines that says that line. And there's just
it's almost
so
as
much...
if Kenneth Branagh is taking the lessons he learned as a kid and just kind of putting them to script. And I like that. It comes from a very honest, authentic perspective.
And so when you have like really great lines like this and just, everything just so great with this movie for me that I love so much that it won a screenplay. I think was a really good nom for this one. And I'm glad that it won.
Yeah, like we said from the beginning, these movies are all really, like, most of them are really good. So, like, even though I think this one is good and not great, and my ranking might be a little lower than yours, I don't think that's really necessarily a comment on the quality of Belfast, but more just that some of the other movies just, like, really blew me away in a broader sense. And I think that's just the nature of this movie. It is a very sweeter, smaller movie compared to some of the others, and we'll talk about it. The Best Picture was a sweeter, smaller movie as well. So,
And I also just want to say, I've heard a lot of people who are a little bit softer on this movie. And so I feel like this one it really either really just hits for you, or maybe you're just like mediocre on it and you're just like, whatever. And, I respect both takes. But I do want to say I absolutely adore in this movie all of the sequences with Buddy and like his little girl crush. And just him just trying to study so much and getting help from his grandparents to study so that he could like sit up with next to her and then she gets moved back. Just that whole sequence.
We've all been there.
The shot on his face when he's like, hell yeah, I got it. I'm going to go sit up next to the girl that I like. And then like just the music is pumping and stuff. And he sits down and then the disappointment of like, oh, she's behind me now.
It's fun. It's very funny.
Go now. Don't look back.
Belfast, as we said, wins Best Original Screenplay for Kenneth Branagh, a long overdue win for him and just in general. And he was also nominated for 6 other awards: Best Picture, Best Director for Kenneth Branagh, Best Supporting Actor for Kieran Hines, Best Supporting Actress for Dame Judi Dench, Best Original Song for Van Morrison's Down to Joy, and Best Sound. Best Sound, a very interesting nomination for that. Speaking of sound, there is a movie that really deals with sound in the terms of, a person living in a family who cannot, who communicates in other means besides sound, and that is CODA, the Best Picture winner. So, Chad, tell us about the Best Picture winner, CODA.
Oh, man. CODA, directed by Sean Hayter, written by Sean Hayter, cinematography by Paula Huidobro, music by Marius De Vries, starring Amelia Jones, Eugenio Derbez, Troy Kotzer, Ferdia Walsh-Pilo, Daniel Durant, and Marley Matlin. Synopsis. A young girl who is a hearing child of deaf adults, CODA, struggles to balance her attempts to help her family with her own aspirations in life. This was also based on La Famille Bellier by Victoria Bedos and et al.
And obviously not many of us have seen, myself and yourself included, have not seen the film it was based on. So like this is a fresh watch, but it is a very familiar story in the fact that like the family dynamics are very relatable. But of course, there's that extra level that a lot of us can't relate to of the the hearing versus non-hearing barrier, which is at times an obstacle and at times something that really connects some people together. At its core, it's just this really, really interesting family kind of comedy drama. It's got some funny moments, but mostly dramatic moments that just bring me to tears and oodles of tears. I mean, this is a real tearjerker. What are your thoughts on CODA, Chad?
Yeah, the first time I saw CODA, I really liked it. But then the second time I saw CODA, I'm going to tip my hand. I think this is probably my favorite movie of the year.
Cool.
movie made me feel things more than any other movie this year, and it's just
Yeah.
because of all the moments that probably made you feel a lot, Dill. Because
Yeah. The back of the truck.
it's
Oh,
just back of the truck, but also the end scene with her doing her audition is one of my favorite moments in all of movies in 2021. I
Yeah.
just love it so much, and even like the song and Both Sides Now. I've been listening to that on repeat over and over, and
Yeah.
just Amelia singing to me so many times.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love this movie so much because it is a movie where she's trying to find herself. She can sing as loud as she wants and do all these things because her parents are deaf. They can't hear. So, she can sing really loudly without feeling like she's going to be obnoxious to anybody. But then when she finally goes to actually sing to people who can actually hear her, she gets so nervous and like doubtful of herself and her abilities because she's been made fun of so much because her parents are deaf. She's afraid that she at one point had the deaf voice that you develop if you don't relate to people who have talked a lot. You might have developmental issues and stuff like that. And and then you see that the family struggling. They're trying to get their fishing business off. They're getting taken advantage of because they're deaf. They can't hear, so people are going to take advantage of them. It's sad, but it happens. And she's trying to stop that. She's trying to do all these things for them, but she is finding it hard to do that while also trying to find time for herself to pursue her own aspirations. Where she wants to sing, she wants to get her teacher to coach her to help her get this audition to get into school so that she can pursue that singing as a career. And she's finding it hard to do both. And one of my favorite moments is when the teacher's trying to coach her and Ferdia, who's also in Sing Street, which is another film I absolutely love. They're together trying to sing, or at least maybe it's just her alone trying to sing, and she's not giving it her all. And he's like, what? Or actually, it is them together because they're trying to sing together. And he's like, the teacher's like, you need to sing like you actually, care about someone so much. And it comes like later when she uses, I think, the same song maybe, or it's like, I think it might be the same song in the back of the truck. That scene.
It's the same song. You're all I need to get by.
Yeah, and she's actually singing it for her dad because in the auditorium, when she's singing in the auditorium before her audition, like doing like just the part for the school,
they can't hear her.
They can't hear her, so they're sitting in the audience just like kind of nonchalant, like I don't know what the big deal is. And then they see all the joy that she brings people, and so that I'm gonna tear up talking about it, bro.
I know, Chad, you're giving us the whole movie. You're just like getting teary-eyed.
That causes him in the truck to be like, no, I want to know what this is, that the joy that you bring people, because I've never been able to hear it. And so then he's able to hear the vibrations on, and it's
beautiful
just such
scene,
a sweet movie. This movie was so well deserving.
I'll just say, I've heard the criticisms out there of people saying like they make it seem almost
there
like
are criticisms.
Oh yeah, Chad. Oh, you're making a joke. No, but
I actually don't know. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. You must stay off Twitter. But no, a lot of people, and this is actually something I want to bring up really quick before I get into the movie itself. Whenever a movie wins Best Picture, it's gonna get hate because someone has a favorite movie otherwise, and a lot of people were saying, like Power of the Dog was the front runner. It's more impressive from a technical standpoint. I actually do agree. I think that CODA is not something to admire for its technical or its like, spectacle or anything like that. It's very much just about the story and the rawness of the acting and the emotion, which I think is great. I think there's a really good need for sentimentality. Sometimes you don't need something to just like make you escape into another world. You can have something that is just very small and personal and touching, and it has the same impact. But obviously when a film wins Best Picture, it's bound to sometimes get a little backlash because this film should have won, or this film should have won. Even Parasite gets it sometimes of like, well, this film should have won, 1917 should have won, or this film, or The Irishman. Same as, and these are some more extreme examples, but like Crash and Green Book. People didn't hate Crash until it won Best Picture. And then they realized, how could you award this Best Picture? Because at the time, it was very popular. A lot of people loved it. But then once it wins Best Picture, then the backlash comes. And I think CODA, unfortunately, is going to get some of that. It already has been getting some of that since it won PGA. It's been actually getting a lot of it. But I don't think it's necessarily deserved, only because, yes, it might not be the most technically impressive. Like, I do think the writing in the first half gets a little corny and sappy. Sometimes it's a little choppy, a little, I think it really gets going in that second half and really starts to really hone in on the real emotions and gets even better as it goes along. And that's not, to knock the beginning. It's just like it takes a little while to get used to, the sappiness and the corniness almost. But I think there's a real place for sentimentality, especially in the years we've had, past 2 years, to, have a movie that just makes you feel good. And sometimes that's all you need for Best Picture. Sometimes the Best Picture doesn't need to be all the glitz and glam and all the spectacle and, the beautiful cinematography or anything like that. Sometimes it can just be the movie that makes you feel the best. And this is honestly, I think for both of us, the movie that makes us feel the happiest. There's movies I like more this year, but it's like this movie makes me feel the best. And if I'm going to put something on to cheer myself up, it's going to be this one. I'm going to cry, but it's going to be a happy cry. And back to my point earlier, I've heard the criticisms of people saying like, oh, it's too much focus on the hearing perspective and like, makes it almost seem like her family is like an obstacle, a hindrance on her. But I think that's true to an extent. Like, you have to understand, as someone who is a child of deaf adults, like, there are going to be obstacles. And for a while, she does blame her parents for that. And that's natural for that character in the moment to blame her family. I don't think it's a knock on deaf people, but it's like a way of that character saying, this is really frustrating for me. But I think at the end, all that is resolved because she realizes that her identity, a lot of it is because she is a CODA. And when you see her finally start to sign during the music, I think that's where it all comes together. And it's like, no, like, she can still go off and be on her own and break free, but this is still a part of her family. And I think that's where it really, really wins you over in those last few scenes, where you really realize that music world and the deafness world helping her parents doesn't have to be two opposing things. It doesn't have to be, well, if I do this, I can't do this. And if I do this, I can't do this. She kind of merges the two together. And she says, I'm going to make this a part of who I am as an artist and music and combine it all together. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. This movie is just, it's gorgeous.
I love it. Focusing on the hearing person. I mean, she's the protagonist of the film. Obviously, you're going to do that. I mean, we've had we don't have enough movies about,
deafness
deaf people and just like, disability needs to be better represented. I agree. But like, this specific movie is about the hearing person in the family. That's what it's about.
Exactly.
So of course you're going to focus on that person, and it's just something that doesn't always get attention. So it's it's a great, interesting story. But then also, I just want to, because I understand, and I respect anybody who has those opinions, but I just wanted to say for myself, I wanted to mirror what you said about the technical stuff. Like, sometimes the technical awards go to great things, and there are a lot of great movies that really push the boundaries of, what you can achieve in film from the technical perspective. But really, if you want to be a great film fan, I think you also need to respect the movies that do what movies do best, is that evoke emotion and catharsis. And that's exactly what this movie does for a lot of people. So I wouldn't discount it.
Right. I mean, you just look at indie versus studio films. It's kind of like college football versus pro football. If you put the best college football team against the worst pro football team, the worst pro football team is still going to clobber the college kids. It's because only a select number of college kids go pro. And I think you can't put them in the same race. I mean, in this case, in the Oscars, we do, but it's like, this shouldn't be compared to like a Dune, where it's like, well, Dune has better sound and better music. It's like that should not be compared. Obviously, it's two separate things. You can compare Dune and something like Star Wars or Lord of the Rings because that's a similar vibe. You can compare CODA to something like Little Miss Sunshine because they're both Sundance darlings that picked up steam at the Oscar race. And I think there's actually great comparisons made to Little Miss Sunshine.
I think I have a pattern. Thanks.
But that's the thing. And it's like, in the end of the day, you're voting for whatever the best picture is for you. And it doesn't say best picture has to be the best overall picture that ticks all the boxes. If you're going to do that, something like Power of the Dog is probably going to win more times than CODA is. But if you're going by just what you thought was the best movie for you, it can be whatever you want it to be. It can even be movies that you don't like, which we'll get to in the next one for me. But like, it's really, endearing to see a little movie like this win because it shows that any type of movie can win Best Picture. We look at Ordinary People beating Raging Bull. Yeah, there's some backlash about it now, but it's like Ordinary People, though, there is an audience who is going to love that movie, and there's an audience who's not going to because they want something more rich and, complex and maybe a little dreary or sadder like Raging Bull.
Nobody dislikes Ordinary People.
Oh, well, we'll see. You might have to go back a few episodes, Chad, to refresh your memory. No, but I really do think CODA is really an endearing story in general with the Oscar race, but even on its own, a very beautiful film. And I think the criticisms, obviously all criticisms are warranted in the fact that, like, if your opinion, you should stand by it and agree, but with your own feelings. But in terms of my feelings and Chad's feelings, I think we both really like this movie. We're both happy it won Best Picture. Of the two frontrunners, I was rooting for this to win. There's another movie or two or something. I don't know. I don't want to give my ranking away, but like there are other movies I like a lot as well. But this is definitely in the top half for sure. To spoil my ranking, this is like a really good movie, and I hope people seek it out because, like you said, it's really good that we get any deafness representation at all. And I think this movie does a good job showing still the side of the deaf people and why their experience is so validated, because it's true. They are inconvenienced by her going to her music classes, but at the same time, they're parents and, the struggle of them having to support their kid. And I think those are great moments too. The monologues from Marlee Matlin and the scenes with Troy Kotsur, this is a really good blending of all just different types of experiences in one little package. And Chad has said it before on other shows and stuff, but the song, what is it called? Beyond the Shore, beautiful song. The song that Amelia Jones wrote and performed for the credits. Yeah, I agree.
Go.
So CODA, nominated for 3 awards, wins all 3. It is the only film, aside from like Summer of Soul and some other films, to win the only awards it's nominated for. The only film that was nominated multiple times that won everything also was Eyes of Tammy Faye, which won actress and makeup. But this is the only other film that was nominated for multiple awards and won multiple awards. And it wins, of course, Best Supporting Actor for Troy Kotsur, Best Adapted Screenplay for Sean Heder, and Best Picture. So that is very, very exciting.
Congrats, Apple Plus.
Yeah. Hold on. I've got to look at my keyboard for the next one. I'm not going to look up. I'm not going to look up yet. Okay, now I can. Yeah. That was such a bad segue. Chad, tell us about Don't Look Up. I was trying my best to come up with a segue from CODA to Don't Look Up. How do you connect those two movies, CODA and Don't Look Up? That's the best way I could do it, was making a gag of me looking down to tell me to Don't Look Up. Tell us about Don't Look Up.
Don't Look Up, directed by Adam McKay, written by Adam McKay, cinematography by Linus Sandgren, music by Nicholas Bertel, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Jennifer Lawrence, Rob Morgan, Jonah Hill, Mark Rylance, Tyler Perry, Timothy Chalamet, Ron Perlman, Ariana Grande, Scott Mescudi, Cate Blanchett, and Meryl Streep. Synopsis: astronomers attempt to warn humanity about an approaching comet that will destroy human civilization. And before we get into it, Dylan and I are going to disagree. Probably.
Yeah, and if you don't recognize the name Scott Mescudi, it's because that is Kid Cudi. You can call him whatever you want to. But yeah, I we do disagree, and I am not gonna sit here and talk about why I don't like this movie because I will, but I'm not gonna go to length. I'm not gonna go on a rant because I don't think, my one criticism is just that it is, to me, a very important metaphor that makes its point in 5 minutes, and then for some reason this movie was 2.5 hours. It just feels like way too long, telling kind of the same message over and over and over again. It almost feels like, I wrote this in my Letterboxd review in a comical way, it's like getting hit over the head with a hammer 1,000 times, but the hammer just says metaphor on it, and the people hitting you with the hammer just happen to be the most talented cast assembled ever. So I think that sums up my thoughts completely. Really, really great cast, but the messaging almost becomes tiresome by the end because of how much it's just like kind of shoved down your throat. And I get it. There's a place and time for, being subtle and not being subtle. And it just didn't personally work for me, but I would love to hear your take because I know you're more positive on this. And I do want it to spin in a more positive direction, starting with the negative, now rolling to the positive. So Chad, tell us what you think of Don't Look Up.
No, it's definitely interesting to hear your take. I mean, this is a very, very divisive movie.
Yeah.
A lot of people either hate it is rotten on Rotten Tomatoes. A lot of people either hate it or love it or just kind of like it, maybe. I don't know. But I wouldn't say I love it. I wouldn't say I'm all the way over there in the love it category, but I'm really far away from hate it because I really actually enjoy this movie. And I
Cool.
think what kind of hinges on your enjoyment of this movie is if you like I don't want to say like Adam McKay's humor in its
Hmm.
entirety because he's
Right.
made totally different types of humor
Mhm.
movies like Anchorman and stuff that a lot of people love,
Step Brothers, which is
or
my
Step
personal favorite.
Brothers.
Yep.
Exactly.
Love that
So
movie.
I'm not saying that if you don't like his current comedy, you can't like
Mhm.
Adam McKay's other comedy
Right.
because he's done different styles.
Yeah, and
And
it
this
is
is
very
in the
different. Yeah,
same
this is a much different sense type of comedy for sure.
exactly, and it's in the different same or it's in the same vein as like a Vice. And I think if you don't like Vice, you probably won't like this one, and vice versa. Or maybe that's not true. I don't know, but
Vice
it's
versa. I
kind
get
of
it.
I didn't
I
even
don't know if you knew you
mean
did
that.
that.
I didn't know I did that. But no, like, yeah, I really enjoyed this movie, and I think it was because I saw it a little bit later after like I was hearing so many people and all the divisiveness. I was like, all right, another divisive movie. We had *Malignant*, we had *The Card Counter*, we had what is it? *Eternals*,
Yeah, yeah,
*Ghostbusters
yeah.
Afterlife*. We have a lot of movies that are somewhat divisive, and *Don't Look Up* was definitely one of them, maybe the most at one point. And
Definitely
I
over
went
Christmas.
into
Yeah.
it. Yeah, I went into that with the question of, am I going to like this movie? I like Vice. I like Adam McKay. I like all these people in the movie, and I really enjoyed it. I really liked
Cool.
a lot of the comedy. And I've heard because they have like this. I'll just focus on for a second on one joke. The running gag of the guy, what was it? The guy charging her for
For
free
snacks. Yeah.
snacks.
Yeah.
And this joke is repeated a lot. And I know have discussed this with you and other people that you thought it got tiring. It's like, why do you keep repeating the same joke?
Yeah.
I think that's comedy genius, in my
Okay.
opinion,
Yeah.
because what they do is throughout this movie, you have this character who is so depressed and distraught about this coming doom that no one is helping. No one is helping. So she focuses on the kind of weird thing. It's kind of the same thing that happens in Breaking Bad when he hears the worst news ever and he focuses on
Yeah.
the mustard stain on the doctor's
True.
shirt. She focuses on this weird snack thing that she just can't get over why any sane person would do this. And when you think she's going to make some like genius like point about, people not doing their jobs or what, she's like, why would he charge me for free snacks? And just keep
Yeah.
bringing it up. And
Mhm.
to me, I think that's hilarious. The
Yeah.
other bits that I really loved is I loved when Leonardo DiCaprio, I love his performance in this because he's usually like different. He's been Wolf of Wall Street. He was Jordan Belfort. He's
Mhm.
crazy as hell doing
Mhm.
cocaine and stuff. And this one, he's this like glasses wearing reserved
Very
guy who
timid,
gets
introvert. Yeah.
timid. He gets shit talked by Ariana Grande and he just takes it. And and basically this whole time he's just kind of taking everything that's coming at him. It's like, and then it builds until he explodes, and he does it
Yeah.
multiple times.
It's a very
And for
network-esque
me,
moment. Like the I'm mad
yes,
and I'm mad as hell. Yeah.
yeah. And for me, I just like really loved that. I thought it was hilarious because I'm
Mhm.
watching this guy because Leo is a brilliant actor. I'm watching him just like the whole time, and then he
Right.
explodes, and I'm like,
Yeah.
God, this is
Yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah, he's a very
So
versatile actor. Even just his pivot from '90s to 2000s to 2010, like just the growth of him as an actor and just the range of roles he's played is just
definitely,
so impressive. Going from Gilbert Grape to Titanic to Wolf of Wall Street, like you said, to Django Unchained, where he's playing a slave owner. Like he has range.
yeah,
And I will
for
say the
sure.
cast is the strongest part of this. I think. Like you said, it's about the comedy. Like the messaging, we can both agree is very over the top, very in your face. We can both agree on that.
I
And
think that's the point of
yeah,
it. But yeah,
that
either
is the point of
you
it. And I think it's the matter of if the comedy works in telling you that. And I think if the
Mhm.
comedy works for you, then you're able to enjoy the ride and it's not as noticeable. But if the comedy doesn't work for you as much like it didn't for me, then the messaging itself just seems even more abundant and even more tiresome. And I just think that's subjective, and that's comedy in general. And I think this is the only outright comedy of this bunch. I would even consider, like we'll get to it, Licorice Pizza has some dramatic moments in the midst of the comedy. This is like all comedy, and yes, it's about the destruction of Earth, but it's, you know, all of it's played for laughs. And yeah, Adam McKay's style, it's very interesting because Big Short, I really liked it. Vice, I liked it. This, for some reason, didn't click for me, but it's a very similar style every time. It's like the very cutty, very jarring editing style that I think you either like or you don't like. It got nominated for editing, so obviously enough people like these styles. So I think it could be depending on mood or just the sense of comedy that just makes things impactful or not, you know?
I want to note on 4 things real quick, if I can.
Okay.
I think this should have had a original song nomination for Just Look Up.
Okay.
Because that song is amazing. And it's played really well in the movie.
Yeah, it does play very well in the movie.
I freaking love Jonah Hill in this movie.
Yes, he is my acting standout. He plays the douchebag Donald Trump Jr. so well. Like, you want to punch him he understands the assignment. And for him to be the last one on, I don't want to spoil the movie. I'm trying not to spoil many of the movies, but for him to be in the situation he's in toward the end of the movie, if you know what I mean, that is hilarious to me. And I honestly think that is the strongest acting performance in this movie by a mile. Like, I love his performance.
I love all of his little bits. Like when he's like, look, we don't put bags over people's heads. That's the CIA. We don't do that. But I did it to you because I thought it was funny and cool.
He just looks so bad.
He's got a lot of great bits. And then I love what's the other thing? Well, I wanted to touch on another thing that you hate is Mark Rylance in the movie.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry to remind you.
You didn't want to rant from me, but if you want me to, no, I won't.
Well,
go ahead.
Here's what I want to say about Mark Rylance, because I know a lot of people really did not like this performance. They thought it was grating. I thought that was the point. I thought that's what Adam McKay wanted him to do. Maybe it was a weird choice that didn't work for a lot of people. I thought it was a pretty good choice because he's basically satirizing these people that actually exist with a really weird voice. But also, my whole thing is how I think about it is when we look at today's times and a movie like Don't Look Up, I don't know how well this is going to like last throughout time or whatever. But if you look at something like Dr. Strangelove, that's like one of the most beloved like comedies of all time, Stanley Kubrick. But like when we look at what's his face? Now I'm gonna misremember his name, but the guy who plays like all the roles in it. Do you remember his name?
Peter Sellers.
Peter Sellers.
Yeah.
Peter Sellers is known as like a comic genius. Mark Rylance is not, but like I think this performance goes in the same line as that. Sure, Last time I watched Dr. Strangelove, you know, he basically is that one like former Nazi guy who like stands up, I can walk and stuff like that. And people think that's brilliant. The last time I watched it, I was like, okay, this is actually kind of dumb. And I don't think this holds up like at all, that like little bit there.
Satire is so subjective. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the point.
And that's a great point. Yeah. And that's why it's a 55 on Rotten Tomatoes. Like, I think if it gets like a 20 or 10, that's very much like, this was awful. But I think if it's a 55 on Rotten Tomatoes, which I think it's at now, that just means that it's very much in the middle. It's not necessarily more rotten than fresh. If anything, it's more fresh than rotten because 55 is still above 50. But when you hit 50, that just means if you bring up 2 people, one's going to like it, one's not. And I think that's honestly some of the most interesting art to at least talk about. And that's why I love discussing this movie, because it's fun to get different perspectives on it. And I think sometimes the movies where we're all just like, it was okay, we both kind of liked it, but nothing special, those are honestly less fun to talk about than these ones where we're a little more divisive because this provides interesting insight. And I totally get where you're coming from. Like, the snacks joke works for you. It doesn't for me. But I love that because it means that someone out there is enjoying their art. And I'm sure there's going to be movies down the line, at least, because I know you like all these, but down the line that you really don't like that I love, that you can be like, well, I'm glad you like that, and I'll say the same to you. I'll say, you know what, I'm glad you're not wasting your time. Yeah. Old and Eternals come to mind.
The last, well, that's not nominated, so we won't discuss it, but maybe at another time. I need to rewatch it. But the last thing I wanted to mention was I love the return of Jennifer Lawrence. because
Yeah,
she
we haven't
hasn't
seen
been
her
in
in a while,
anything in a
right?
while, and I
Since
kind
what,
of
like
missed her.
Passengers, Red Sparrow? I don't know what came first, but yeah,
Yeah, and I
feels like
thought
she's
she
been
was
missing.
really interesting in this movie. I thought she was really
Mhm.
funny in the movie, and
Yeah.
I like the return of her. I want to see her more.
Unless you assholes are taking me to the Batcave, fuck you for putting this hood on me.
Yeah. So that's a very divisive film for us. Chad loves it. Or Chad likes it a lot. I don't know if you love it or
I
like it a
really
lot,
like
but
it.
you really like it. I really do not. But that's okay,
The
and that's fine, and that's movies.
runtime moves very quickly for me because I'm laughing.
There you go. Yeah, it all depends on if you can enjoy the comedy or not. And I really do wish I did. But Don't Look Up, nominated for 4 Oscars, does not win any. This is one of those that went Oscar-less, which I think is a good thing, but some people might be upset about it. But Best Picture, Best Original Screenplay for Adam McKay and David Sirota, Best Original Score for Nicholas Britell, and Best Film Editing for Hank Corwin. So, chat. If there
Yeah.
was going to be a disaster, let's not say a world-ending disaster, but let's say there was going to be like a big storm and you needed to go somewhere, what type of vehicle would you take? Would you maybe like fly a plane? Would you maybe like ride a scooter? Would you maybe like drive my car?
You want me to drive your car?
Or you can drive your car.
Yeah, I'll drive my own car. What?
All right, so you're gonna.
Okay.
Anyway, let's talk about drive my car. I think that was one of my better segues, Chad. Do you agree?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I don't know
my
if he's just
car.
saying that to make me feel
All
good
right.
or if he actually agrees.
Well, I love every single thing you do, Dylan. Okay.
Well, thank you.
I got to preface this. I apologize if I pronounce any of these incorrectly. These are a lot of Japanese names. I don't practice Japanese. Drive My Car, directed by what? Ryusuke.
I was gonna say you don't have. Yeah, you don't have to go for it if you don't want
Hamaguchi.
to, but we can.
No,
If you don't. Okay.
Ryusuke Hamaguchi, written by Ryusuke Hamaguchi, and Takamasa Oe. Cinematography by Hidetoshi Shinomiya, and music by Ieko Ishibashi. Starring Hidetoshi Nishijima, Toko Miura, Reika Kirishima, Park Yu-rim, Jin Dai-yeon, Sonia Yuan, An Huat-tai, Perry Dizon, Satoko Abe, and Masaki Okada. Okay.
Wow.
Synopsis.
Great job, man. Hold on one sec,
Thank
Chad.
you.
Before you go on,
Yes.
round of applause for that. That was impressive. That was impressive that
Thanks.
you were able to get through that. I mean, like obviously, it's harder sometimes to read these names,
Yeah.
and you did a good job. Good job.
Thanks. Synopsis. A man directs a multilingual production of the play Uncle Vanya in Hiroshima as he copes with the death of his wife, based on a short story called Drive My Car by Haruki Murakami.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean the description was short, but this movie is anything but. It is very long. It is 3 hours. The title card doesn't even come in until 40. I think I clocked it like 41, 42 minutes in. Really interesting film. I think this is one that like we could spend a whole full 3 hours just talking about this. I'm not going to, obviously, but I'm interested to get your perspective because as a theater person, like my perspective might be a little different, but just the way the language. I mean, this is a movie about language. It's about so many things. It's about language. It's about grief. It's about community. It's about breaking barriers, putting up barriers, letting your own barriers go, reconnection, rekindling, revenge, and forgiveness. It's got so much layers to it that like even 3 hours doesn't seem to be enough time to get all of it across, but it does. And I don't know. I can't wait to talk about this one. But Chad, give me your thoughts, because I want to bounce off of your thoughts rather than going into my own. Because if I go into my own thoughts, I'm just going to be here for 3 hours myself, and you'll be able to drive your car to another state and back by the time I'm done talking about it. So, Chad, tell us your thoughts.
You're on fire today, Del. Yeah. So the thing about this movie is it kind of came out of nowhere a little while back, and then like started to gain a lot of steam. Not enough to win Best Picture or anything, but it still got nominated for Best Picture. Yeah. And it's a very interesting movie. I finally got to watch it as soon as they threw it on streaming, and I really thought it was interesting because I didn't realize that they didn't do credits or anything like that until 40 minutes in.
Yeah.
When I got there, and I went, they didn't do credits yet, and it's 40 minutes in. This is crazy. What's going on? And it was like almost like the first 40 minutes is like a not an epilogue, but a prologue.
Oh, I was about to say, yeah, it reminds me of Up in the fact that like it's a much shorter condensed version. But if those 10
Mhm.
minutes of Up was 40 minutes, and we just got to like actually hear some of the conversations
Exactly.
in those scenes of like her, being pregnant, miscarrying, them planning on going on vacation, her getting sick, her dying. If that was all elongated in 40 minutes, and then the car almost kind of feels like the house in a way, like the way this movie's set up, it reminded me of Up in that sense. Like yes, it's a prologue, um, just focused on his relationship with his wife for 40 whole minutes, which is something you don't see in American cinema, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think, like, maybe you might think that this film is too long. This film just meanders. Honestly, I think that's the point, is because
Yeah.
it's like people say it's like a meditation on grief, and it's a meditation of a film. And that's kind of like what it is. And the 40 minutes of setup is very important.
Hmm.
And then the rest of the movie is very important. And, honestly, I think this one, like you said, there's so many layers to it. I think this one deserves, definitely, even though it's 3 hours long, more than one watch to kind of
Hmm.
fully appreciate.
Yeah.
And I only got the one watch. That's what I'm going off of. But
That's still impressive that you were able to get through it once,
I really
because it's a
enjoyed this
time commitment.
movie. It is. I really enjoyed it, though. I thought that had a lot of great stuff in it. I really liked how they explained the beginning later, and then as soon as because I was not on board really until we
Hmm.
got more explanations, and then
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's what was going on in the first 40
Yeah.
minutes. And it was a little bit tough, because it's 3 hours in mostly Japanese too. But you got a lot of great stuff in here. You explained a lot of the themes.
Hmm.
I like just how it was basically, yeah, like when it came down to it, I think it was the this main character, and then the woman who drives his car for him, and they come together, and they learn about each other,
Hmm.
and they're both really sad about losing people,
Yeah.
and they kind of like comfort each other and learn about each other, and they're there with each other to kind of
Hmm.
console each other. At the
Yeah.
end, there's like some messaging. I don't really remember everything that was said,
It's
but
okay.
I
Yeah.
just remember there's a lot of like really great stuff, and I really
Hmm.
actually want to check this one out again
Yeah.
to understand it more.
Yeah.
And I
As
really
yeah,
liked
go ahead.
the a lot of deaf CODA stuff, but like I really liked
Yeah.
the deaf lady in the movie. I thought
Yeah.
that was really cool that she came in,
Hmm.
auditioned, and then she did it all in sign language. They cast her,
Yeah.
and
And then you find out
we got
later
a lot
that
of
it's
great scenes with her.
the producer's wife too, and
Yes.
he's just like, "I
Mhm.
wanted her to have a fair shot. I didn't want her to get it because of
Yeah.
me." And I honestly, as a theater person, and this is like coming from actual personal experience, like I love how this movie makes a comment on just art being a way of healing and using like
Yeah.
theater directly to tell personal stories. And I think one of the most impressive things was this idea and this concept of doing a show. Uncle Vanya is a very, metaphor, rich show, a Chekhov play, but doing it with every actor speaking their own native language. I just find that so impressive because how many times do you see a movie where like someone has to put on an accent to play a different character and they don't necessarily get it
Mhm.
quite right, or someone is learning to speak English for a movie in one location and vice versa? Like you see on the SAG Awards, the actors from Squid Game trying to like speak American in their speeches and then just saying fuck it, I'm just going to speak in Korean. And there's something so beautiful about hearing someone speak in their native voice that I love just the idea of doing a production focused on the themes of grief and acceptance and all that stuff, while also being about everyone's individual personalities and what they bring to the table and their contributions to their art, and learning how to like talk with language and understand people from other parts of the world and other cultures, and just kind of creating this beautiful marriage of all those languages. I love that aspect. And then just the idea of like the car being that safe space where he can kind of like
Yeah.
seek that solace and that quietness, and the idea that he has his wife reading all the rest of the lines in the show for him to practice his lines. It's something we saw in like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood with Leonardo DiCaprio. You would record your lines and then you would say them back to yourself to help yourself memorize them. But then it
Yeah.
becomes even more of a thing when she dies, and he uses that as the last kind of presence of her that he has left. It's her, and he associates that with his car, and it almost becomes an idea of like him needing to live an hour away from the theater solely so he can be with his
Yeah.
car for an hour, because that to him is an hour with his wife that he just clings on to. And it's almost sad to an extent. It's the same thing with Up and the guy with his house. I make this comparison because it's like he doesn't want to get rid of the house. He takes the house all the way to South America because he can't get rid of it. And then when he finally learns to let that go, and I think in this movie when you finally see her getting the car at the end and having, basically indicating that he has moved on, it's very touching and it's beautiful and it's sad, but it's also very poetic. And I just love that idea of just that car being the safe space, because as actors, like, I have my own personal things I do to get myself in the zone for a performance, but also like a lot of those things become my own rituals in just my everyday life beyond the theater. And I think this is a sense of that too, of like what was once a way for him to train and learn his lines becomes now the thing that helps him cling on to the past, but also the barrier that prevents him from moving forward. And I think it's just so complicated, but so complex in a beautiful way. It's very artsy-fartsy, this movie, but I love it. Like, I love the artsiness. I love the use of language. I mean, half the dialogue is Uncle Vanya dialogue, the Chekhov dialogue, but like, even that dialogue really informs the narrative of the people performing this stuff too. And even the relationship with the actor, who later, when you rewatch it, you realize is the guy that was sleeping with her when he came home from his flight that got canceled. And like, that's something you don't really necessarily remember because it happened so earlier in the film that when you rewatch, it's like, oh wait, yeah, this is the guy that later, like, they bond over this and they have that really touching conversation.
素敵じゃないですか、とても。
君はこう考えてる。僕たちは同じ悲しみを共有してる。同じ女を愛したから。
Yeah, no, I could
like
go on
a long one too.
Forever, but yeah, it's a very long one, and I like that. I like that the conversations just feel like conversations in the fact that they go as long as they need to go and then they stop. Yeah, it's not like you have a quota that you have to hit of how long each conversation could be. You don't have to edit it down, and obviously, like, that would never get nominated for best editing because it really, I mean, obviously it had some editing, but like, this isn't as flashy of an editing thing as like a King Richard or Don't Look Up, where you got these intense sequences that are cutting back and forth. This one just breathes, but I think there's a beauty to that, kind of like how I said with CODA. There's a beauty to the sentimentality, and here I think there's a beauty to the stillness that some movies wouldn't work with, but this movie does work because of. So yeah, really, really beautiful film.
Can I get into a really quick little spoiler territory for Drive My Car?
Yeah, I've already kind of spoiled that the car ends up with her anyway, but if you,
exactly,
a lot of people have seen these movies, and if you haven't, go watch them.
Let me get this straight. The girl who ends up with the car, the chauffeur, the driver, she had a mom with a split personality, and her mom's split personality was her best friend, and she hated her mom, but she loved her mom's split personality friend.
Yeah. No,
that was a thing
rich.
that happened. Okay,
it's layered. Yeah, and she blames herself for killing her mother because there was this like
fire,
terrible accident where the house kind of
caved
in, and
it was a collapse.
Some sort of fire or collapse. Maybe it was due to a fire. Again,
I think it was
one of those movies where you can't really remember.
Like that,
yeah.
like
but yeah, and she almost kind of feels guilty because she didn't like go in there to rescue her and pull her out. It's like, did you kill her? No, but like, did you help her? No. And it's like, you as a person can relate to that and say, well, in that situation, I could see how you would think that you were responsible, but then he had to tell her, like, you're not responsible. It's not your fault. But it's like the Robin Williams movie. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. Oh.
Exactly. Good Will Hunting. But that's why that's exactly the same thing that happened with him too, is because he was so upset about the cheating that he didn't want to go home, but he was robbed of like the last moments with her.
Yeah, and even if he had been home, maybe there's a chance he gets to the hospital before she even passes away. Who knows? And I think that's just what's so beautiful about this movie is it just unfolds very naturally. And I think that's what's so powerful is that it just feels like you're living with these characters for 3 hours. And the theater bits are fun too. Like, I love the auditions and the rehearsal scenes when they're outside and they just have that beautiful scene. He's like, okay, good. Now that was beautiful. Now all we need to do is show the audience because they're just like acting to one another. But it's so beautiful. I want every theater
really
student to watch this because I think it's even more enhanced knowing just the process it takes to just put on a show. And too, because you've done theater before, like just that whole process and the way you bond as a cast with your director and just with the material you're doing and like how that can like shape your whole life. Like, it's so beautiful. Drive My Car, nominated for 4 awards. wins one. It wins for Best International Film. Also nominated for Best Director, for Director Hamaguchi, Best Adapted Screenplay, and of course Best International Feature and Best Picture. Those are the four. So, question: it's set in Japan. Are there beaches in Japan? Do you know? I guess so. It's on water.
Probably. I mean, it's
What kind of
an
sand do they
island.
have there? Do they have like dunes? Dunes of sand?
I don't know.
I don't know. Well, they definitely have spice. Let's talk about dunes of sand. Let's talk about Dune Part 1.
Dune, directed by Denis Villeneuve, the great Denis Villeneuve, snubbed. He should have been nominated for Best Director.
Agreed.
Written by John Spates, Denis Villeneuve, and Eric Roth. Cinematography by Greg Fraser. Music by Hans Zimmer. Both great. Starring Timothy Chalamet, Rebecca Ferguson, Oscar Isaac, Josh Brolin, Stellan Skarsgård, Dave Bautista, Stephen McKinley, Henderson, Zendaya, Chang Chen, Sharon Duncan Brewster, Charlotte Rampling, Jason Momoa, and Javier Bardem. Synopsis: Paul Atreides and his family are thrust into a war for the deadly and inhospitable desert planet Arrakis, based on the novel Dune by Frank Herbert.
That was actually a really good synopsis. I can't believe you got that in one sentence. I was like, yeah, because this movie is a lot to explain if you've never heard of it or read it. And I had not read it before going into it. I was a very much Dune virgin. I had never heard of Dune, seen Dune, never saw the David Lynch. So this was all new to me. And it's really impressive how complicated it is, but how easily conveyed it is. Like, I was expecting to be so lost and be like looking up shit, but I was able to follow. Like, some names and stuff is a little bit out there, but I think the most important thing when introducing like a complex world is making it understandable enough, at least the sequencing and understanding who's good, who's bad, and just kind of sorting that out. I think that's something that this does well, and Lord of the Rings. But I have to ask you, Chad, do you have any prior experience of Dune? Was this a first watch in terms of like first time seeing Dune at all or hearing of Dune at all?
Well, not hearing of Dune, but like,
right.
You know.
Well, this first time I heard of Dune was when it was announced, when Denis Villeneuve was signed on. Like, I hadn't heard of
the material.
No,
okay.
I hadn't known about it. Yeah.
Well, I almost am on the same page as you because I had never read it or saw the David Lynch. I still haven't seen the David Lynch one. I definitely want to. I'm a big David Lynch fan. But yeah, I am a very much so Dune newbie as well. I mean, I've heard of it, but I didn't know anything about it other than like worms. I knew there were worms and sand. That's really all I knew. And there's a lot of that in there. But yeah, like, this, and I definitely now want to at least get the audiobook because I've tried reading it. It's very, very dense. And I could not get into the book at all. And I know there's huge fans of the book that just love it so much. And that's perfect. I love now that we have a movie version that we can digest a little easier.
And you speak of the denseness, and I think the density, but the beauty of this is that Denis Villeneuve was like, I'm not going to try to cram the whole book into 2 hours or 2.5 hours. I'm going to make half of it, and we'll see how it goes. And it got the funding, thank God. But even if it didn't, like, it's still cool that like he knew he would rather it be incomplete and thorough than crammed and rushed but complete. You know what I mean? And I kind of like the idea of like, even if we don't get a second one, this story is still going to be told at the right pacing, the right tempo, the right fullness, all the right details, because I don't want to leave anything out. And I kind of appreciate that, just him saying, I don't want to cram it all into 2 hours from the get-go.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really great point. I think that he definitely does also like drive my car, like let this movie breathe a little bit and just let it kind of like be its own thing. I do not think that this is a perfect movie. One bit. I do have a feeling that this movie is one that if you love the book so much and you're just a huge Dune head, I guess that's what they're called, right? Dune heads.
Really? I don't know.
I don't know, probably not. But if you're a huge Dune head, then you're probably going to adore this movie so much. I think
because it's so accurate from what I've heard.
You're not exactly because Denis and a lot of the creative people of this film, I think even Hans Zimmer, were fans of Dune. So I think because of that, the best creators for adaptation are people who love the source material. So that's very true.
Yeah, and
But
I
I think
remember
also,
at the New York Film Fest, they even said like when they were kids reading the book, Hans Zimmer said he envisioned a movie in his head and what that movie would sound like. And then Denis Villeneuve said,
yes.
when I was a kid reading the book, I envisioned what this film looked like. And when they talked to each other, they said, we imagined the same thing. And it was a match made in heaven. And I think that's why it's such a beautiful partnership and it works so well. The music
And
with the storytelling. Yeah.
that's why it won so many technical awards, because it is a
Mhm.
great technical achievement. You know, it's the Avatar of its day, but I think better than Avatar. I know
I'd
you
agree.
love
I'd
Avatar.
agree with that.
Anyways, we'll get there. We'll get
I
there.
would agree with that. I love Avatar,
Okay.
and I would agree with that. Yeah. How do you
But
feel though about it being a part one? Because I know that's like one of the big
yeah,
qualms that a lot of people are having. Like, because I personally don't mind it, because I look at something like Lord of the Rings, and all those movies ended with like a cliffhanger, like what's gonna happen next. Even Star Wars does that too, and I get it. Like this one, it wasn't sure if it was gonna continue or not, but like I
yeah.
think once it's complete, it'll work better than it is just now on its own without any other next part. You know what I mean?
I think this one is just such an interesting movie for me, for me personally, because I love Denis Villeneuve. He's one of my favorite directors of all time. I love so many of his movies, like Prisoners, Blade Runner 2049. A lot of these, Sicario, and Sandy. I love a lot of these movies that he's done. But going into this movie, I was so stoked because it's Denis Villeneuve. And then after seeing it, I gave it 5 stars. I was like, this movie is amazing. It looks so great. It's great. And then after hearing so many people say, like, oh, it feels like half of a movie and, stuff like that, I watched it again and
Mhm.
I'm like, I kind of agree. It
Yeah.
does. So it's weird because in some way, I totally see what you're saying, where you're like, I like that. I like that they didn't force so much into it. I think,
Mhm.
because I know you love Eternals, but I think that's a movie that crams so much into it
And that's
that
fair.
maybe
Yeah.
you might not think that it has the time to breathe, that like a Dune does. And
And I
because
feel
it
like if
did
he
what
had
it's stuck
tried
it
to do
into,
two parts, yeah, it would have kind of been
yeah.
what a lot of people are thinking Eternals is, which is like it was just way too much crammed in.
Mhm.
Like, let it breathe. Yeah.
Even if you like a lot of the stuff that's in there, it is
Hmm.
still just a lot crammed into one film.
Yeah.
But like Dune, I'm very excited for part two. I really like part one, but I also think that it in some ways it's great that it's a faithful adaptation, but it also kind of suffers for not being the full, complete film that like a Fellowship of the Ring is, even though it still has to
Yeah.
continue and it leaves off on like a kind of a cliffhanger type of a deal, like what's going to happen next.
Hmm.
And but I really like a lot of what is in Dune. I like Timothy Chalamet in the role. I like a lot of the actors in the roles. Rebecca
Yeah.
Ferguson is great. Oscar Isaac is great. And
Hmm.
I think a lot of the makeup and design, just everything that
Yeah.
they really
I mean,
made this
yeah.
world. The worms creep me out. I have to look away a lot of times
They
at the
are
worms.
really
I don't like their weird
icky. Yeah.
little hairs. They bug me. I bug me, right?
I didn't get that one, but now I do.
Yeah. And the voice thing that they use is so creepy.
Yeah, that thing. Yeah.
Cut the rope. Stuff like that. It's
Yeah.
like, oh
Yeah.
my God, Jesus.
Yeah.
Kill
And
him.
that's where that's why there are technical categories, because it's like
Right.
if you look at this slate, a lot of people are not going to emotionally resonate with Dune very much because it's not really an emotional film.
Mhm.
It's a hero's journey. There's not a lot of emotional depth. I guess there is a little bit with him and his mom,
Mhm.
but it's more about the style and the actual just action and adventure.
It's almost emotionless in some ways though, because she's like,
Yeah.
I'm in the sect and
Yeah.
they're gonna come test you.
Yeah, it's almost
I don't know, it's
intentionally
just
so, I guess, to an extent.
yeah.
Like that's their sense of community and what their world has come to, that they are more closed off. I don't know, and that's why
Oh.
I'm excited for part two, because like apparently it's more action packed and
Mhm.
stuff like that. But my point was that like I'm glad there's technical awards, because even if someone doesn't necessarily love the film as much from an emotional standpoint, like a CODA
Mhm.
or a Belfast or something like that, they can still look at this and say, but like, did anyone use sound as good as this movie this year? Probably not.
Yeah,
Did
definitely
anyone
not.
make
No.
visuals this impressive? And I know I love the Marvel stands out there, but if you look at just the way they made the visual effects for this, it's unmatched. And I
Yeah.
love that. I love how innovative it is in its techniques. It is kind of like what you said, the Avatar of its time, because of its
Mhm.
use of groundbreaking technology. Denis Villeneuve is just a master at that. Really creating a great
And
spectacle. I think Blade Runner 2049 is probably a stronger emotional core, has a better story to it, but I think
mhm.
it's on par with Blade Runner in terms of the visual aesthetic for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, going on, even like the technical advances that Hans Zimmer made, like as much as, and we'll get
Yeah.
there, I love Johnny Greenwood and want to see that man get a freaking Oscar one day, because he's been like
Someday.
churning out these fantastic scores.
Should have been there.
Hans Zimmer did not deserve it because this dude's also creating not just great music in the score, but just creating sounds, and that's what Johnny Greenwood and
Yeah.
Radiohead and all these people do. Is they
Yeah.
create great sounds, and then that's why they're the leaders of their like industry. And
Yeah.
but
Hans
I
Zimmer
want to
basically
say,
creating instruments that like they would have used of the time. I'm like, that's
yes,
brilliant. That's so good.
yes, it's so
Oh,
cool.
so good.
I love stuff like that. But like also, I want to get into like a little bit of a plot, not too much because we got to move on. But
Mhm.
I do really love, and this makes me want to. This is the thing that makes me want to actually start reading the books, because I really love the Paul Atreides Messiah thing and the whole thing about him being the Neo of
Yeah.
Dune, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
The
the Neo
savior,
before
the
Neo, I
one.
guess.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love like the part when like she's like, "Wait, did you put this on yourself? Is this your first time?" And he's like, "It just made sense to put it on this way." And she's like,
Yeah.
he's gonna act the way
Yeah.
like he's in our customs, like he's one of us. And I'm like, that's so cool.
Mhm.
Like, I
Yeah.
just think it's
And
really
that's
neat.
and that's something I think part 2 will also explore more is this idea of like
Yes.
more of a king-like figure instead of the scrappy
Who's
underdog, which is going to be really
Zendaya
interesting.
in this movie? In these
I know a
movies?
lot of people say they were Zendaya baited, but like she's in it consistently. She doesn't have as many like big long scenes, but he's always
Just
constantly like
glimpses of her.
envisioning
Yeah.
her. Like she's still a
Mhm.
presence throughout. I don't think she was like necessarily hidden the whole time. I get she was underutilized to some people's
Well,
expectations because
it's
also
the
they used a
point
lot of
that
her stuff in the trailer too, which is a thing. But
yeah, but it's the point that she's this mysterious figure that he's having
yeah,
visions and
exactly.
dreams about.
Yeah.
We're gonna get more Zendaya. Calm down, Zendaya,
Yeah,
people.
and
Calm
honestly,
down.
I get why people are upset because if I watched a movie for one person and they weren't in
True,
it a
very
ton, I'd
true.
feel that way. But yeah, but I think there's enough good performances to cling on to after that.
It's time.
Dune nominated for Best Picture. Well, it's nominated for 10 awards, wins 6, which is the most of the night. So it won a 60% record, which is good. The ones it lost, the 4 it lost were Best Picture, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Makeup and Hairstyling, and Best Costume Design. What it wins is Best Original Score for Hans Zimmer, Best Sound, Best Film Editing for Joe Walker, who is way overdue. He edited Blade Runner for 2049 and Arrival. Greg Fraser, who won Best Cinematography and is probably going to win again next year for Batman. We'll see. Best Production Design and Best
The
Visual
Batman.
Effects. Sorry, The Batman. That's right. 1989 was Batman. That was The Batman. Sorry.
In
But anyway,
1966.
part 2 will be really fun to see. Timothée Chalamet become the king. Speaking of king, let's talk about King Richard.
The King. King Richard, directed by Reynaldo Marcus Green, written by Zach Balin, cinematography by Robert Elswit, and music by Chris Bowers. Starring Will Smith, Anjanou Ellis, Sania Sidney, Demi Singleton, Tony Goldwyn, and John Bernthal. Synopsis: the story of Richard Williams, the father and coach of the famed tennis players Venus and Serena Williams.
That's right. Kind of a straightforward biopic in terms of like what you're advertised is what you get. It's a story about Venus and Serena, but mostly focused on the dad's perspective. And I think people who are sports fans, fans of sports movies, I think this ticks a lot of the boxes and beats of a lot of the best sports movies in terms of the way the actual matches are presented and the way the endearing emotional core in the storyline. There's always some sort of anthemic theme or song. In this case, it's a Beyonce song that kicks into the credits. But yeah, a powerful story. I wish I knew more about the Williams sisters going in. I love watching them play tennis, but like I didn't know much about their story, so it was very interesting to see. A little bit conventional in its presentation, obviously, because it doesn't really break the mold or reinvent the wheel when it comes to biopics and sports biopics in particular. But this is obviously something that is very heavily dependent on its ensemble, and I think that's the first thing to touch on is just how good the acting is in this. I know he's a subject of controversy because of the Oscars, but Will Smith is giving grade A work, obviously. But I do disagree with the claim that like people say like this is Will Smith's movie through and through. It is Will Smith's movie, but I wouldn't agree with the through and through part. I think it's important to acknowledge that this is very much about all the other members of the family as well. Like Anjanou Ellis has some great moments, some great scenes. Sanaya Sidney just brings so much to that role of Venus. Like I love the scene with her and Will Smith. Like I think it's a little bit shortchanging them to say like, oh, this is Will Smith's movie through and through. I think it's more about like the ensemble. So I don't like that criticism of like it's all just about him. Like it's not just about him. It's about all of them. He is the standout for a lot of people. But I like the idea that like it is all their movies. Like it's Venus, it's Serena's movie, it's Anjanou Ellis's movie. It's it's a great ensemble effort first and foremost, which I really appreciate. Despite being more played as a best picture or a best actor contender, more about the acting, but like I think it's a really good ensemble piece.
Yeah, true, very true. I think like he is kind of like the force in the movie, but there's a lot of great performance all around. But I mean, that whole criticism thing too, like I think like is anybody who goes, oh, that actor stole the movie, like people say stuff like that all the time, and I feel like this is kind of no different as saying that Will Smith stole this movie.
And it's not necessarily stole the movie because that's a different. That's more like they stood out to you, like they were the standout to you. I think that's different than saying like it's his movie through and through, like it's his.
Gotcha.
And it's like it's not just his, it's all of theirs. That's the criticism I was talking about. Not sorry, I should clarify that. Yeah. But that was the only criticism I was
important distinction to make for sure. But anyways, I agree. A lot of great performances in this. No one person just makes a movie unless you're Tom Hanks in Castaway, and even that had other performances. But yeah, like King Richard, I agree with you. It's a very conventional sports biopic, but it's one that I really, really like. That this one is done so well, even despite being conventional. And I think even though it's conventional, it is on a really good topic that doesn't always get focused on, and it is the father of the the genius athletes and stuff like that. I know that was another criticism that some people levy at this movie, saying that it doesn't focus on the right people, it focuses on the dad, and he's probably not great because sports dads aren't great people.
I do share that agreement. I do think I wish it was more there was just more of Venus and Serena's own perspective and them more so on an equal playing field with Richard, more so than just like Richard with Venus and Serena as like supporting characters. But when you see that Venus and Serena themselves produce the movie, it's a little bit more forgiven because it's like, well, that's what they wanted to tell. They wanted to tell their dad's story more so than their own. And they have said they wanted to make a sequel. Obviously, this is before the Oscars, but they wanted to make a sequel where it was just more about Venus and Serena. Now that we've kind of gone through the very early stages to see like them as in their prime, growing up as adults, which will be more focused on them, less than Richard. But I do share that sentiment only because like I am just so fascinated with their story, and I find Richard Williams himself to be kind of a presence that I don't necessarily know if the whole film being resting on his shoulders, like he almost seems more of an antagonist more than a protagonist at times, because he is very demanding, very strict, sometimes getting in the way of his kids' careers, but he does mean the best. Obviously he means well, but I almost would have liked to see what it would have been like if it was more Venus and Serena's story and he was more of the supporting force and presence. But again, that's just the direction they decided to go in, and that's fine, and I don't fault them for it. And when I said conventional, I meant more conventional in presentation, because obviously the story is anything but conventional. It's a very groundbreaking story, and I think that's the best thing about it, is that as conventional in its styling as it is, like it's very much stylistically conventional in terms of sports biopics. The story story alone, I think, is enough to carry it. Like you could have the worst director, you could have Tommy Wiseau making this film, and like the fact that the story is so powerful, it'll still reach an emotional core, if that makes sense. Like the story enough on its own can carry this film with or without an impressive director behind it. I'm not saying he's not an impressive director, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I gotta say, I disagree. I think that I love the fact that this focuses mostly on King Richard, Richard Williams' character, because I never got that. I mean, I'm not devaluing how you felt about his character.
You disagree.
Whatever.
Yeah.
But the way I took it was I thought he was like he was one of the sports dads. I don't know about the real Richard Williams, but in the movie, he was one of the sports dads that I think is a perfect one. He cares so much about getting his kids to reach their full potential, about going out and becoming the best at something,
Hmm.
but not getting too full of themselves, not thinking they're better than everybody else
Hmm.
because they have this really great talent, not bragging, not going out and becoming some of these people that rise to the occasion and then having a sharp fall because they end up doing drugs or letting things
Hmm.
go to their head. It's because
True.
they think they're better than everybody else and stuff like that, letting all the fame go to their head. And I love that, not only that, but then you have the light moments with him where John Bernthal's like, well, we need to, but by the way, brilliant performance by John
Great
Bernthal.
performance.
I
Yeah, great
loved
performance.
him in this movie. But
Hmm.
like, when he's like, they should be practicing. They need to be here practicing. And he took them to Disney World. He's like, no, it's not all practice all the time. Sometimes they need to be a kid and have fun.
Hmm.
And I love that about him. And then also the great like double dialogues that he has with his daughters when he's just the emotional, like Coda made me feel the most, but this movie when it hits those few scenes where he's talking with Venus and Serena, he's like,
Hmm.
she's gonna be great, but you're gonna be the best there ever was. Just stuff like that just made me
Yeah.
feel so much.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
and I think it's interesting that you brought up that like you didn't know much about Richard Williams because I'm coming from a perspective of someone who watched him on TV and saw how polarizing he was, and I think this is a much more
okay.
toned down version of it, which is why in my head I was like, why are they making him the central figure when he is such a
Mm.
polarizing figure? It's almost like the Disaster Artist, like they're making it about Tommy Wiseau, who's just a train wreck, but like we also get Greg Sestero's, more um
Oh, okay.
uh, better lens on things to understand the more
Yeah.
humanity of the event because Tommy Wiseau is just such a character. It's kind of like this where like Richard Williams was just such a character that like I would have liked to see what it would have been like from more the girl's perspective, seeing him as this more crazy or demanding dad. But I get it. Like obviously you also have Will Smith, who's a for the most part a very likable guy in this role that like he's
Mhm.
obviously going to be more endearing than he actually comes across on TV. And again, we only see what we see on TV when it comes to Richard Williams. He might just be that on the cameras and it might be someone completely different behind the scenes, which is
Mhm.
why it's a value that Venus and Serena are producing this film so they can get the most authentic representation of their childhood as possible. So
And
yeah, I have a
maybe it
criticism, but I agree
is
with their decisions that they made because that is their
may
what they believe to be their truth.
maybe it, yeah, exactly. And maybe it is a little bit more idyllic of a character. Like he's not the actual Richard Williams, he's like a character in this movie.
Hmm.
Maybe
Yeah.
the character of Richard Williams in this movie is more idyllic and noble because that's how they think of their dad. And I think
Hmm.
that's also important and
Yeah.
special,
Or
but
how they
also
want their dad to be remembered because they feel like he's been treated unfairly. That could be a way too. And honestly,
yes.
I'm fine with that. And it might not work as well for me, in
Mhm.
terms of just, what I've seen versus what I'm seeing in the movie as an adaptation, but as a movie, I think it does a good job. It does a great job. I think it's a
Yeah.
great movie. It's taking all the context aside.
And the absolutely one thing that I wanted to touch on that I love that this movie does with this character or these characters is that I love the scene when you have Richard, John Bernthal, and then the rest of the family there, and they're being pitched, and they're going to get $1 million, and they're like, oh my god, this is the most money I've ever heard of, and then like the mom and I think Venus, right? She's the
Mhm.
main
She's the one who
sister.
started. Yeah.
And so they're sitting there like, this is most money, but then he's like offers off the table once I leave, and then they're smart enough to know, wait, why? Why do you need this deal made so
Hmm.
bad so quickly? Why can't we think about things? And the thing that I love about Richard Williams in that moment is he lets his daughter make the decision. He doesn't
Hmm.
try to, it's not about being the force that just forces people into things, tells
Right.
them what to do, all this stuff. I don't know if that's how
Yeah.
he is in real life, but in the movie, he guides them to be the best people and the best athletes that they can, and then he
Mhm.
lets them make their own decisions. And I think that's
Yeah, I like that.
extremely important.
Yeah. And I do think, like, obviously Will Smith wins the award for this, but I really just love Sanaya Sidney in this movie. Like, she for me is the rock of this movie because
That's
she
Venus.
Venus, yeah, because she's young.
Mhm.
She's a young actress, but I think I like the idea that she learned. I don't know if she knew how to play tennis before this, but she like learned the demand of tennis, and she's acting alongside Will Smith, giving these really deep emotional moments, and just that whole last scene where she's on the court, winning and then losing and struggling, and you just can kind of see all the emotions running through her head, and then that final
Yeah.
moment with both the parents. And I think Anjanu Ellis is also great. I honestly wish she was almost had more moments because that one moment in the kitchen
Yeah.
scene is just so good, and that's what I think she got her nomination for. But I wish she was in it a little bit more consistently throughout in terms of big moments like that. But Sanaya Sidney really impressed me just as a young actress in this role, carrying the torch there. And I do hope maybe they make a sequel. I don't know if it'll be as easy now with all the controversy with the Oscars, but I think I'd like to see a sequel to see
Same.
where these girls would go, especially as they age as actresses. Because honestly, one of the most impressive parts is the fact that they look so young in the beginning and they look older as it goes on, and they filmed this in a smaller span of time. So like this was not a Boyhood thing where like you could film
Right.
year after year after year. Like they really did a good job aging those actresses, or I guess de-aging them in the beginning, not with visual effects, but just the way the costumers decide to costume them. Like these aren't fancy, flaunty costumes like Cruella or anything, but it really shows that they really cared enough about the attention to detail to make it seem like they were actually growing up as the movie went along, when in reality they probably filmed it over the course of a few months, which is just something just inside movie magic that I love. So
Your sister is gonna be #1 in the whole world, no doubt about it.
I know that.
But you gonna be the best that ever was.
yeah, King Richard nominated for let me get it 6 Oscars, wins 1 obviously for Will Smith. Very eventful night for him. Best Picture is what it's also nominated for. Best Supporting Actress for Anjanu Ellis. Best Original Screenplay. Best Film Editing, which it won the Eddie Award for, and then Best Original Song for "Be Alive" by Beyonce. So that
Good
was
song.
very interesting. Hold on, wait, I'm getting a call. Yep. Okay. Sorry. My food order's here. I ordered some pizza. It's actually Licorice Pizza. So
Ugh.
while I go take care of that order, why don't you tell us about Licorice Pizza?
He's not
I don't
leaving.
actually have an order. I don't need
Licorice
to go
Pizza.
anywhere. Sorry. For the segue.
Directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, written by Paul Thomas Anderson, cinematography by Michael Bauman and Paul Thomas Anderson, music by the great Johnny Greenwood, starring Alana Haim, Cooper Hoffman, Sean Penn, Tom Waits, Bradley Cooper, and Benny Safdie. And basically all the Himes are in this. The
Yeah,
whole
and
Haim
so many
family.
other people too. Just so many great familiar faces. Yeah.
True. I left a lot of people off. A synopsis. Alana Kane and Gary Valentine grow up, run around, and fall in love in the California's San Fernando Valley in the 1970s.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
Cool. So we've talked about a Paul Thomas Anderson film before here, There Will Be Blood. This is a very much a
Yes.
different pivot, very different film. What I love so much about Paul Thomas Anderson is that he understands the time and place he's in, and he wants to explore every single ounce of oozing culture and flair of that time. It kind of reminds me of Quentin Tarantino. Like when he commits to a place and time, he just really relishes in it and revels in it. Like I love that about this film. Just it's essentially a hangout movie. Like not a lot.
Yeah.
It's not really a narrative. There's no really beginning, middle, end. It's just kind of these episodes with, I mean, obviously you have them meeting each other in the beginning and then the kiss at the end, but everything in the middle is just kind of episodic. It's really just like them on their own misadventures, him being this very mature kid and her being this very immature adult. And I love that idea too, of just that's how what connects them together, not just romantically, which we'll get to, but like just as a bond in general, just having someone who you kind of connect with because you are exactly what the opposite of what society expects you to be at that age. But first off, a lot of controversies centered around 2 specific sequences, obviously about the mocking, obviously, of Japanese people. I don't want to dwell too much on those moments only because, like I think what's been said out there from both perspectives, some saying, well, that was the point that was trying to emphasize that kind of character, and others saying it was unnecessary. It didn't really say anything about that type of person. It didn't go far enough to say something. I get both sides. I get both arguments because I am someone who thinks I understand what Paul Thomas Anderson was trying to do, but also think he could have gone a little further to explain why that's a bad example of a person's attitudes at the time. I wish they kind of went further with the commentary, but I don't want to dwell too much on it. But Chad, if you have an opinion on that, because I know that's been kind of started the downward spiral of his best original screenplay campaign. That's kind of what was the nail in the coffin for the WGA and what ultimately lost him the Oscar to Belfast. So I do want to just get your opinion on that, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the relationship itself, because that also bears conversation.
Well, I do want to say I did and I didn't vote for this to be predict this to be the best originals or your original screenplay award, because I think it is one of the best, if not the best, screenplays of the year, because it's just so solid. And the reason why, well, I will touch on the racism thing in a second, but the reason why I really actually love this film is because it reminds me of two of my other favorite films, very different films, but it's kind of a mixture of both.
Can I guess?
At one, sure.
Are they both Linklater, or is it like the Before trilogy and
No,
Dazed and Confused?
neither of them are Linklater. Well, no,
right,
one of them
mind.
is Linklater. Never mind. The one is Dazed and Confused.
That's
You're
what
right.
I thought.
Sorry,
Okay.
I got confused.
I'm trying to think of the other one. The Graduate? No.
No.
Harold and Maude? I don't know.
No.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I did think a little bit of Harold and Maude because there's similarities between that one as well.
Just go ahead. I was just trying to guess.
And also Bernie, I guess, a little bit too. Remember Bernie? That's another Richard Linklater, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah. Punch Drunk Love, another PTA movie.
Yes.
This is in the same kind of vein where it's like an unlikely kind of relationship, and that's what I love about this movie. And everything that you said about the movie reminded me of why I love this movie so much, is because it is the hangout movie. It is the Dazed and Confused. It is the time capsule. And he got it so, I wasn't alive in the 70s, but loving Dazed and Confused, reading a lot about how they were able to get everything in Dazed and Confused, the mindset, the music, the soundtrack, everything that goes into it to make this like a time capsule movie made in the 90s or made in 2021 that really captures the time of back then.
Yeah.
And I think,
and this will be a timeless movie because of it, because it doesn't, it's something that could have played in 1970, but I think if you play it 20 years from now, it doesn't lose its merit, kind of like American Graffiti was when it was made, capturing that era. Movie. It's like it doesn't seem to age because it's very specific about the time and place it's talking about.
Yeah, it's like, when something's dated, but this is not dated because it is dated. Wait, what?
Exactly.
Anyways.
Exactly. But I will agree on the original screenplay merit in the terms of like the banter, and the actual dialogue is so funny. And like, do I necessarily think it's the best screenplay? Probably not, only because it does lack any sort of narrative, like actual like beginning, middle, end concrete structure, but I kind of like that about it. But the actual dialogue and the words and the humor is really, really strong, save for a few little moments. But like most of the part is just so strong, especially in the little characters they meet along the way, because each actor that pops in is only there for a few minutes. Like Bradley Cooper is only there for a few minutes. Benny Safdie is only there for a few minutes. Sean Penn. But in their moments, they're able to get so much out of the actors. And I think this is one of the best ensemble pieces because of that. And I do have a standout that I'll talk about later. Not in my best actress category, but yeah, it's Harriet Sansom Harris. That whole sequence of the agent, she's in like 2 minutes. And this is an indication of like stealing the show for me. Like she's not, I think, the like, I wouldn't nominate her, obviously, but like in this movie, when I left, I was like, that was my favorite part, because she really stole the show for me. And those 2 minutes, just the way she like those little like looks, like the like I love that shit. Like she just made me roll on the floor laughing, and I actually could do that when I watched it at home. Whereas in the theater, I couldn't roll on the floor laughing, but I was rolling around in my seat laughing. So
try it next
anyway,
time.
Continue on what you were saying. Sorry, I just need to pop that in there because I love her.
She wasn't my favorite part, but I do get your love for it because it was really funny and she was great in the movie. But yeah, like I love just movies like Manchester by the Sea, a very depressing movie, but I love like a kind of a day in the life movie. I love movies that just like are just flow aimlessly sometimes, and it's just
kind of like driving my car.
Yeah, exactly, and just try to explore, this kind of relationship. I know that the relationship itself is problematic. A lot of people have issues with it, because of the aging, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have that big of a problem with it because, and I know that they kiss at the end and she says, I love you. Other than that,
Yeah.
they don't really define this. Sure, there's a
I
part where
agree.
she flashes him. There's a part where he goes and he tries to like feel her up because that's what a young boy would probably do.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
and she expresses her reserve of this all the time throughout the movie.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, "Is it weird that I hang out with Gary and his friends? I think
Yeah.
it's weird."
Yeah, they do mention it a lot. I think that's the difference between like a film showing something versus condoning something. I think it's okay to show something without saying this is
Yeah.
how life should be, because the title itself is Licorice Pizza. Who in their
They
right
don't
mind
go
eats
together.
licorice pizza? No one. But there's going to
Right.
be one person who says, I kind of like this, and everyone's going to say, ew, you're gross. I think that's the point, is you're supposed to look
Yeah.
at this couple and be like, you're not supposed to be together. You shouldn't be together. And I do think that's why the ending of everything, I wish they hadn't had the kiss, because then I think a lot more people would get on board with it. I think the kiss does kind of contradict a little bit of what it's saying, but even the kiss, you can kind of look at it from Gary's perspective. If this is this whole fantasy land in Gary's, like where he's fantasizing about this older woman, like
Oh my
then maybe the
God.
kiss didn't even happen. I don't know, but I like to
Dude.
believe that the kiss itself is just kind of more about the like I think you're still supposed to leave not wanting them to necessarily be together and like actually pursue a romance, but still be on board with them being each other's like person, in terms of like being that shoulder to cry on, that person to kind of like help you out in a tough situation. And I think I kind of wish there wasn't a kiss, only because it does complicate the idea that like it is not romantic. It does make it more of a definitive, like this was supposed to be a romance, and I don't love that. And I think that's what really soured a lot of people. But I do see why it was added in the end. Like it's one of those movies that I think I like to look at from an outsider perspective rather than trying to live as the characters, because this is not a relationship many of us can relate to, and we shouldn't relate to, because nowadays, I don't know if it was back then, but nowadays it's illegal to be in a relationship, 15-year-old and a 25-year-old who may or may not be even older than 25, and she might lie about her age. Like I think this is more of a movie that you're supposed to observe rather than try to empathize with, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you actually kind of blew my mind a little bit because you recontextualized that ending for me, because I was trying to figure it out too. And like you like, because when you said that and you said maybe that didn't actually happen, movies do this sometimes where it's like maybe that didn't actually happen. That was Gary's like fantasy vision.
Yeah.
Because like when she does go, I love you, Gary, it's almost like a dream like thing, the way she says it.
Because at that point in the
Oh
movie,
my God.
at that point in the movie, he's kind of found success with his little pinball thing, and she's kind of found success in her
Matt
work.
Bernie's
And obviously,
Pinball Palace.
yeah, and I think there's like that idea that they were able to make it on their own, and that's why I sometimes like to think that ending didn't even happen. That's more of what he wishes could have happened, because now he has to do some more growth, but she's finally in a place where she can say, I'm now fully in adult mode. But again, she gets kind of in a mix up with her boss, realizing that she's only invited to a bar to cover up the fact that he's gay. Like maybe she isn't ready yet to kind of like dive into adulthood. Like I don't know. It's a very interesting film, and I think you can watch this and say like this relationship is like not right, but still understand what he's trying to say about just fantasies of young men exploring what sexuality is, and just like having a crush, because supposedly Paul Thomas Anderson had a crush on his babysitter when he was younger. And who was his babysitter? Alana Haim's mom. So he makes a movie.
Know that. That's insane.
He makes a movie about a kid crushing on another Haim woman. I mean, there's got to be distinct parallels. If you're looking at it from Gary's perspective, it's a movie about a guy crushing on his like babysitter like figure. If you look at it from Alana's perspective, it's her with this kid who follows her around, who kind of annoys her, but she knows that he understands her. She kind of likes that attention. I do think the kiss kind of recomplicates some things, but like up until that point, I think it's a really interesting character study, and I really do just love living with these two characters. I think it's really funny, save for that one bit that I mentioned earlier, but like I really do think it's a very interesting film worth talking about. I don't think it should just be brushed off because it's about a wide age gap relationship. There's so many movies about wide age gap relationships, or just relationships in general, that are
almost
toxic.
famous.
they're
Harold and
supposed to
Maude.
be they're obviously clearly written that way for a reason, and I think it's just a matter of and you're okay not to like it because of that. That's valid. I don't like certain movies because of certain aspects, but I don't think that's a reason to say like it's unacceptable to like something like this because the movie's not condoning that. It's about licorice on pizza. It's not supposed to go together.
Yeah, and honestly, I love that symbolism that you talked about with the licorice pizza doesn't go together.
Mhm.
That's kind of also the same thing about a lot of the abrasiveness of the movie, of the age, of the racism. But it also plays into the fact that, like you said, this is a very personal Paul Thomas Anderson film. He wrote this about a lot of people he knew back in the day. The
Yeah,
racist character was somebody he knew back in the day. He
true.
put that in there because he's like, well, no, I'm going to play it true to how
Mhm.
everything I experienced was. And I know today is not a day that you can be politically incorrect. You just can't be.
Mhm.
And people put that into movies. And I'm like, dude, let the creator do his thing.
Yeah.
You can watch it, you can have an opinion, but I think the dialogue on both sides has gotten so abrasive about
Mm.
you. You like that relationship in that movie. You think that's okay. It's like, I'm not saying that, first of all, but then people will say that, oh, you like toxic relationships. And it's just like the dialogue needs to get
Mhm.
so much better
Yeah.
around these things, I think.
Because Phantom Thread, which he just made prior to this, was also about a relationship that was way too toxic with an age gap while
Right.
legal was way bigger than this one. Like Daniel Day
Yeah.
Lewis is like 60 in that, and the what's her name, Vicky Krieps is like 50s, maybe younger. Like I really think his whole thing is about different types of people and toxicity and that type of thing. And Punch Drunk Love is more romantic in like that they do complement each other well, but even then, like it's
Mhm.
about different individuals that you don't normally see captured on film. Sean Baker does this too. He made a film about this as well. Red Rocket. It's just
Yeah.
that it's an adult man with a young child, girl, and I think that is even more polarizing. But I think it's for a purpose. I think with the
Yeah.
Asian stuff, like I do
Double
wish there was
standard.
at least one line of dialogue or two just to kind of like add to the commentary and make someone say like is what are you what like have some sort of look by a character kind of like judging him to make it 100% aware that you're supposed to not laugh at him but more with because I think a lot of people are watching that and they're like haha, he's making fun of her accent, that's funny, and that's like, oh no, that's not what you're supposed to do.
I
I
kind
don't know.
of understand where you and a lot of people are coming from because when I first saw that, I was like, oh shit. Because I'd heard about it like from
Mhm.
you and other people.
Yeah.
Like, there's a part in this movie that's kind of ridiculous. And when I saw it, I went like, ooh, okay, that is a little cringe. But I think that's because that's my 2021, now 2022, politically correct brain going, ooh, that's cringe. But like, I'm like, no, it's Paul Thomas Anderson being authentic. To me, that's what that
Yeah.
says. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's a little abrasive, but honestly, I'm like, you can feel that way. But I just don't think that a creator has to put something in his movie. He has to be okay with you not liking the movie,
Yeah.
but he should be able to put anything in his movie that you may not like. And I'm not talking about
True.
you specifically. I'm just
No, I
talking
know
about
what you
people
mean. Yeah.
who may
Yeah.
not appreciate that. And I
But I
don't
am part
think
of that.
that,
Like I don't think it necessarily needs to be there. I think if they had just omitted it, I think the movie is much stronger because when you think about that,
yeah,
like that's
maybe.
kind of what sticks in your brain. But that's just me, like you said, in a modern lens watching this. Maybe 10
Yeah.
years ago I wouldn't have felt the same way, but that's just how I changed as an audience member. I think it's also fair to say like someone in the editing booth could have been like, hey, you might just want to like
Hey,
cut this
Paul.
just to make sure because there's enough stuff that is already kind of polarizing and that he wants to make a statement on and
Mhm.
make it polarizing that like I don't think that necessarily adds anything. I think that's my criticism is that it doesn't
Yeah.
really add anything. It just kind of is just another bit that like if you got rid of it, it wouldn't have. I think if you get rid of it, it's a
Kind of
stronger
true. Yeah.
film.
I see you.
Adding it doesn't make it stronger. But I get it.
Yeah.
Like I get the purpose of including it. That's why I see
I
his side
just
and the other one. Yeah.
I just would like people, like, I understand you can feel exactly however you want. It's not wrong. However you feel is
Yeah.
not wrong. That's just how you feel. But just please, if you watch a movie, if you don't like one little part in the movie, that doesn't mean that the movie's trash, that you have to trash the movie and start fights and stuff like that. Let people feel how they're going to feel. It's okay. You feel the way you feel. And
Mhm.
yeah, I really like this
Yep.
movie. Not
Yeah,
perfect,
I do too.
but I
Yeah.
really enjoy. Oh, let me touch on. I'm sorry, just real quick. The
Yeah.
soundtrack. I've been listening to
good
the
one. It's a good one.
soundtrack. It's one of the best soundtracks ever. Let's check out
Yeah,
that soundtrack.
it's really,
it's
really good.
amazing.
Yeah, and that's another thing with these period pieces. They really nail the time and the music of that era to when it's not used correctly. It's very jarring and it stands out. It's like, oh wait, that song didn't come out then, but I love this use of soundtrack, which I really like.
Barbara Streisand?
Barbara Streisand.
Sand.
Sand, yeah, like sands, like the ocean, like
Barbara
beaches.
Streisand?
No, like
Okay,
Absolutely.
Licorice Pizza. Sadly, another one that doesn't win a single Oscar, but it is only nominated for 3, just like
One
CODA,
day,
except
Johnny.
it doesn't win its 3. It gets nominated for Best Original Screenplay, which it loses Best Director and Best Picture. So if you're going to get nominated for 3 awards, Picture, Director, and Screenplay is a good 3 to get. But unfortunately, it was not a dream for them. It was more of a nightmare. Speaking of, let's go to Nightmare Alley.
Nightmare Alley, directed by Guillermo del Toro, written by Guillermo del Toro and Kim Morgan, cinematography by Dan Louston, music by Nathan Johnson, starring Bradley Cooper, Kate Blanchett, Toni Collette, Willem Dafoe, Richard Jenkins, Rooney Mara, Ron Perlman, Mary Steenburgen, and David Strathairn. Synopsis: a charming and ambitious carnival worker with a mysterious past who takes big risks to boost his career. Based on the novel Nightmare Alley by William Lindsay Grisham, and there was another adaptation back in the, I think, 20s or 30s.
Step right up and behold one of the unexplained mysteries of the universe.
Bradley Cooper's great, and he's playing a very different role here. Like, he grew up, or not grew up, but like we kind of grew up with him being like the comedy guy. He was the guy in The Hangover, but then
Wet Hot American Summer.
Yeah, then he started making this transition to like more dramatic roles. Silver Linings Playbook, kind of a serial comedy, but then he really full-fledged jumped into dramatic work, and he's doing a great job. He's a great actor. Star is Born, I stand by it. He should have won director and actor for that movie.
Love that movie.
We'll get there when we get there. But yeah, I think this movie itself is probably going to warrant the least discussion because I really don't find much to fault about it, but I also don't find anything about it that really just makes me so excited that I want to like talk a while about it. Like, I think it's with Guillermo del Toro, it's going to be beautifully designed, and it is. The sets are freaking fantastic. The cinematography is great. The score is great. It really mirrors the kind of score that Desplat did with Shape of Water. I believe it was Desplat. I'll look that up in a sec. But like, I really like the sense of atmosphere, and I know people think the first hour is a slog because it's just like, why do you need the circus stuff? You can tell that in 5 minutes. I think that's kind of my favorite stuff because it's like I grew up as like a magic geek. My favorite part of America's Got Talent was whenever there was a magician. Whenever there was a magician on screen, I was always like, "Ooh, I want to learn that card trick." And I just kind of love the idea of like those fortune teller, like mind reader things because I know they're so hokey, but like I kind of dig it. Like I really like that idea. So like, I like the ins and outs of the carnival. I love just like that first hour just living at that carnival, and then the second hour is really interesting. It kind of lulls a little bit, but then it ends really strong with him kind of like using this act, and it all goes wrong, and then he ends up like getting chased in this whole mess. Like, I think it's just a well-structured movie, a well-designed movie, but it's also like, I think of all these movies, it might be one that I think, even though it's not my least favorite of the slate, I think it'll be the one I remember the least, only because the other movies in this slate I either really liked so much that I'll remember them, or I disliked them enough that I'll remember them, or they were just bigger Oscar players that I'll remember them. Whereas here, I don't know. Like, it was very clearly the number 10 because it wasn't predicted to get any Oscar nomination. I mean, look at the chart. Nightmare Alley was snubbed for the Golden Globe, the PGA, and the BAFTA, and it was only nominated for Critics' Choice because Critics' Choice nominated 10 movies and couldn't nominate Drive My Car because it was only an international, and they have some weird rule about that. But, like, no one really thought it would get nominated. It got nominated. Good for Guillermo. I mean, I think coming off The Shape of Water, it's hard because that was so good that, like, you're not always going to capture that, a level of brilliance. But yeah, I think it's fine. Chad, what are your thoughts? I mean, I don't think there's much more else that I have to say, but
well, I think of all the noms that this one could have been the strongest runner for is production design, because you said it exactly. It looks beautiful, and cinematography too, but like it looks beautiful, and the sets are designed so brilliantly. Like the circus stuff is so good, and I love the fact that apparently Guillermo del Toro does his production design by shopping on eBay. And I thought that
What?
was kind of hilarious. Yeah, you didn't know that?
What? Oh, that is awesome.
That's what
that is
that's
awesome.
what I've heard.
Wow.
No, actually, no. He said that on a talk show, so it's accurate. Yeah, I love Guillermo del Toro a lot. I love a lot of his films. You know, and this is weird because this is going to be weird to say because I know a lot of people love this movie. I don't love this movie. I like this movie.
Yeah.
But this movie follows, I feel like, a similar formula as a lot of his movies, and that's not a bad thing. But it's like
Mhm.
the third or so movie that kind of like feels like a Pan's Labyrinth or feels like a Crimson Peak. You know, but it's Nightmare Alley. It's new. It's brand new, right? But it feels like the same as those other ones. And honestly, I know it's divisive. Crimson Peak, I like a lot more. I think it's a lot more
Really? Oh,
interesting
okay.
than this one. I love the performances way more in this one.
Mhm.
I think Bradley Cooper is great. I think Kate Blanchett is great. Rooney Mara. A lot of these people are great in this movie. But like, I don't know. I also just don't vibe with the flow of the character arc that is the character that Bradley Cooper plays. I think it's a great ending, but it doesn't feel like super crazy earned or anything.
Yeah.
By the end, I'm like,
Yeah.
we could have made this a lot shorter and
Mhm.
still got there, and it still
Yeah,
would have been
I
such a
agree.
strong ending, I think.
Yeah.
All you
I
needed
think
was Willem Dafoe to say, I'm sorry, just one second.
No,
Willem
go ahead.
Dafoe to say that whole thing about being a geek, and then seeing that repeated later. I guess you needed some time in between there to be like, oh,
Mhm.
see, I remember that from when Willem Dafoe said it. I don't think you needed like 2 hours and 40 minutes or however long. It
Yeah,
felt
it
long.
is very long. I was gonna say like it's interesting because every movie Guillermo has done up to this point. There's some sort of creature or ghost element involved. Whereas here it's very much not that, but he's still kind of creating a ghost, but it's a lie that it's a ghost, which I think is an interesting twist. But I think just because he doesn't have that extra fantasy element, it almost feels like one of his more tamer, less memorable efforts. Like I think it's well designed, but I think just like not having like some cool creature or some weird like ghost story or anything, like I think that is severely missing here. To where like it feels on brand for Guillermo, but it's almost like I kind of miss like him doing, you know, amphibians who have sex with
Fantastical.
humans, and like Hellboy was this really big hulking presence, and Pan's Labyrinth the
Haunted
fawn with
Crimson Peak.
and then the guy with the eyes in his thing, you know, like
Mhm.
it's a very interesting filmography he has that like this one is probably his more pedestrian effort. I don't want to say that because Guillermo del Toro is such a master of what he does, but it's
Yeah.
very much more like I feel like anyone could have done this and it wouldn't have looked as good maybe, but like I feel like this is a story that a lot of other directors could probably tackle. Whereas like Pan's Labyrinth, I don't see anyone else but Guillermo doing it. I don't see anyone else
Yeah.
but Guillermo doing Shape of Water. Whereas here it's like it's obviously a remake. Like it was done in
Yeah.
the past. And I haven't seen the original, so I don't know if it's as good or not. But it's an interesting leap into noir. It's interesting to see him do something new.
Mhm.
But whereas some directors that we'll talk about did something new with their genres and really excelled, I think he did something new with the
Yeah.
genre and it was just fine. You know what I mean?
I mean, it's definitely a Guillermo del Toro movie. It's brutal as all hell. It follows a lot of the things that Guillermo loves to put in his movies, but I've just seen it so many times that I feel like
Right.
this one is a little bit of the weaker one.
That's fine. Yeah.
But
And
also,
I agree.
the one thing that I really kind of don't like about Guillermo is the animal violence in his
Oh,
movies.
yeah.
He loves to do this. Even with Shape of the Water, I knocked that one down a couple pegs because of the animal violence in it. And I'm like,
cat.
please stop putting this in your movie.
Yeah.
And I don't like this, but
Yeah.
maybe some people do, and I think that's insane. But whatever.
Anyway.
Is he man or beast?
It is nominated for 4 Oscars, obviously Best Picture, Best Cinematography, Best Production Design, and oh no, I lost my shoot. I was trying to do all of them off the cuff, but I need to remember what the 4th one was. Cinematography, Production Design, is it costumes? Maybe? Hold on. See, this is why I got to write everything down.
Cinematography,
It is
production
costumes. Okay,
design.
it's
Yes.
costumes.
Yeah.
Interesting, because I don't think the costumes are that spectacular either. But hey, you know, more power to him. Speaking of power, let's talk about Power of the Dog. Good
The
segue.
Power of the Dog.
Sweet,
Directed by
short segue.
Jane Campion, written by Jane Campion, cinematography by Ari Wegner, and music by the great Johnny Greenwood, starring Benedict Cumberbatch, Kirsten Dunst, Jesse Plemons, Cody Smith McPhee, Thomason McKenzie, So crazy underused Thomas and Mackenzie. Genevieve Lemon, Keith Carradine, and Francis Conroy. Synopsis: a domineering rancher responds with mocking cruelty when his brother brings home a new wife with her son while dealing with his own inner struggles. Based on the novel The Power of the Dog by Thomas Savage. And yes, I also hated the animal violence in this. Very much so.
But I don't want to excuse it, but like I think here at least it's a very prominent part of the plot. You know what I mean? Like it's
Doesn't matter for me.
No, I know, but I'm just saying like it's
Right.
not just added there for extra excess. Like I feel like it's more vital to the plot here. But this is a very interesting case because I saw this at New York Film Fest, liked it, kind of like confused with where it was going, and then it went somewhere. I was like, oh, that's very interesting, but I was like, okay, I'll sit with it for a little while. Watched it the other day, and I took like a complete 180 on this. I really love this, and I really didn't expect to, because like also when you're the early front runner for Best Picture, like a lot of front runners, like we're kind of even seeing with CODA now that it's won, like a lot of people just like to hate on it because it's the front runner. Like, oh, Power of the Dog's not that good. Like it's really gonna be the front. It's really gonna win all these awards. But like I really do think it's warranted the praise because stylistically, like the moments, it's not like Dune where it's all like loud in your face. It's very much more subdued, but everything is so detailed and thought out and meticulous. Like just the close-ups of like him brushing the cone with his finger, and the Benedict playing with the flowers. That's also supposed to like have some sort of visual parallel to like actual like female anatomy, the flower aspect and the metaphor, like just all the different metaphors visually and the rich filmmaking. Like, yeah, it's no wonder why Jane Campion won this. And when I made my Pickle Award nominations, I didn't initially nominate her. Wasn't high on this film, but I think rewatching it, I might have considered nominating her because I think what she's done in actually presenting this film is really, really intriguing. It is a little slow, but I think it's really well thought out and a really good directorial effort. So I'm glad it won something. And if it did win something, it's that, because I think the direction is the strongest part. But also another thing, Benedict Cumberbatch, not a fan of his accents usually, but he did a good job here. And that's another thing. I like to see him improving, and seeing him as a cowboy, I was like, oh boy, here we go. And then I was like, oh, he like sold that really well. But yeah, tell me, what are your thoughts on Power of the Dog, Chad? Did it work as well for you?
Yeah, I mean, I like this movie. I don't love this movie. If I'm gonna do a 180, like you did, it hasn't happened yet. Maybe a little bit down the road, I need to kind of sit more with this movie, because I do agree. I think there is a lot going on there that you might not notice the first time, that you might have to kind of, just kind of notice later. There's just like little bits and little things that the attention to detail that is Jane Campion, I guess, just the average viewer probably won't pick up, and they'll go, what is even going on in this movie?
Like the first time I watched it, I was like, oh, so are they falling in love now, this kid and this adult? And then when you rewatch and you realize that he's planning this guy's murder, I'm like, oh, okay, this makes sense. And then you watch it even earlier in the film, I'm like, no, from the very get-go, this kid is like, I'm gonna murder this motherfucker. And I'm like, geez, like,
I still haven't even noticed that. So
yeah,
I don't know.
just
I didn't notice where
growing.
the point was when he decided to do that. But I guess it was right when, he kind of fucks with his flower or whatever that he made.
Yeah,
and,
I think from the beginning. I think from the beginning he doesn't like him, and then once he starts to see the effect it has on his mom with the drinking and all, that's when he's like, I'm gonna take care of you. I'm gonna do something. And then I think when he finds all the stuff about Bronco Henry and finds out that he's secretly gay, I think that's when he uses that as a way of manipulating him to get close to him, to then, proceed with the lasso and all the anthrax and infecting him and all that stuff. And at the end, when you see him holding the rope and then he has the gloves and it clicks that it's like, oh, that's right, he wasn't wearing the gloves and it got infected. Like, it's a lot of stuff that I missed the first time that I honestly felt kind of dumb that I missed the fact that like it was a whole revenge plot earlier, but then I was like, no, because I think it's not supposed to be so in your face. And that's the beauty of movies like this, is that like the more you watch it, the more you get out of it. And I like movies like that. Sometimes I don't like that. I like to just know what it is when I see it. But like some movies are better on rewatch, and this one was for me.
You didn't play? Sure did practice a terrible lot.
Yeah. I think it might just be more brilliant, like when you're able to read between the lines a little bit and see the little things that you haven't before. But for me, with this one, I just haven't really super crazy enjoyed it. Okay, I love the score. I gotta say
Yeah.
that. I love Johnny
I was gonna
Greenwood
say,
so
take
much.
a
I'm gonna
shot
love
every time Chad says he loves Johnny Greenwood this episode.
every score he's done. I think his best was Spencer, which wasn't even freaking nominated.
I know.
But this one is so close. I love both of these.
Yeah.
And you know, so that's my favorite part of the movie, and my least favorite part I've already said is the animal violence.
Yeah.
But like
And the
also
score
like
really sets the mood very well. Like it has this eeriness and creepiness that
yes.
like tells you that there is something wrong and there is something brewing. Even
Yeah.
if you don't know what it is, you like know something's up. And I like that about the score. It's kind of like letting you in on a secret. I like that.
Yeah. And so there's like a part specifically, you know, well, there's two parts. There's the one where he like kind of hits the horse and shit. And then there's the other part where Cody's character kills the rabbit.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me just hate that character so
Yeah.
much. And it also made me kind of really sour on this movie a lot.
Okay. Yeah.
Even though like I understand it's a part of his character, it's showing
Mhm.
how, you know, logically minded he is and he can do science and he's going to do science later. I
Yeah,
don't
and
think
I
it was
think
necessary.
Well, I also think in
for
terms
the
of
movie.
character, it informs the audience that this kid is almost sociopathic in the way that he doesn't really
Yeah.
show emotion when he's harming a literal animal, and can do it very stone cold. And that way, later when he's messing with Benedict Cumberbatch and like leading him on and kind of manipulating him, you understand that like it's all just because he's working out his plan, that he has no actual emotional attachment to Benedict Cumberbatch, which is something I also missed the first time. I was like, oh wait, so like yeah, no, he's totally just approaching this from a very like logical standpoint rather than actually giving in his emotions. And I kind of like that about Cody Smith-McPhee's performance, is how closed off it is and how subtle it is. Jesse Plemons too, like very subtle performances compared to Benedict Cumberbatch, who is very over the top in this, and Kirsten Dunst, who is very much more like the emotional wreck going through it. You know, like I think it's a very interesting dichotomy, seeing how calm, cool, and collected they are, especially how menacing. And I like what you said about how it makes you like the character less. I think this is an interesting film where I think you kind of root against both of them, because you want this kid to get revenge for his mother, but at the same time, you don't. He's like planning to murder this guy, but at the same time, you don't like this guy because he's tormenting the mother. And it's like, at the end of the day, you're only really rooting for Kirsten Dunst and Jesse Plemons more so than the kid or Phil. You know?
Yeah. I think in a way, it's interesting. I think in a way, because a movie can be technically brilliant, can have like actually just a brilliant way it's set up and constructed and done and a great story, whatever. But you also have to enjoy it. You also have to, I feel like, be able to enjoy it. Even sometimes like a horror movie, like can be very abrasive sometimes, but you still enjoy it because of the way it made you feel. This one didn't make me feel great. And this one made me feel kind of disgusting with the way he harms animals and stuff.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's my Licorice Pizza a little bit. That's
True.
the thing that
one
I
element
can't
couldn't get past, even if the director is trying to make a commentary about it. That's a great point. That is a great point.
And so that's why, like, you know, I would expect people not to fault me because of that, and I wouldn't fault them for how they feel about Licorice Pizza or other movies, whatever.
Not at all.
But this one I still liked because I do agree that Jane did a great job and that definitely deserving. And it is a film I probably will revisit just to see where I can, like, you know, see the
Land.
little things, and stuff. So, but it was a good film. I liked it.
Yeah.
I love that Johnny Greenwood score.
Take another shot. Yeah, so Power of the Dog, nominated for 14 Oscars. It overperformed. It got nominated in categories no one was even predicting by a long shot. So what it wins one. And this is iconic because it has not happened since the last movie we talked about last month, which is The Graduate. So Jane Campion wins Best Director for the first time ever since The Graduate. So it's been how long? 67, 80, 90, like at least 50 years since this has happened. And that's kind of unprecedented that a film would be nominated this much and only wins for director after having this many nominations. But also nominated for picture, for Best Actor for Benedict Cumberbatch, who's amazing. Best Supporting Actor for Jesse Plemons, who we're both a fan of. Cody Smith-McPhee. Best Supporting Actress, her first nomination, Kirsten Dunst. I love that piano scene, too. It's very, very nerve-wracking. You going to say something, Chad?
I want to add, I love that the fact that this movie gets another instance of Kirsten Dunst yelling Peter. Okay, go ahead.
Yes. Adapted screenplay for Jane Campion, cinematography for Ari Wegner, film editing for Peter Scabaris, better original score for who did the original
Johnny
score?
Gradle.
That's right. Best production design for Grant Major and Amber Richards, and best sound. Again, production design, sound were not supposed to be, but like not predicted to be nominees. Jesse Plemons was a surprise, and they all picked up nominations. So it got 3 more nominations than it was expected to. A really powerful, as it's in the title, Oscar showing in nominations. But again, the award season's so long that enough people can sour on the front runner, and not even sour on the front runner, but find themselves bored with the front runner and maybe pivot to another film. And that's what happened with CODA. Speaking of pivoting, I feel like dancing a little. How about Dancing in the Streets? How about some West Side Story to finish our 10 film marathon? Again, we have never done 10 films on this show except for 1939. In 1939, those movies required way less discussion because they weren't as fresh. But here, we've made it to our 10th and final film of Picture This for this month. Let's talk about West Side Story.
Absolutely. West Side Story, directed by Steven Spielberg, written by Tony Kushner, cinematography by Janis Kaminski, music by Leonard Bernstein, starring Ansel Elgort, Ariana DeBose, David Alvarez, Mike Feist, Rita Moreno, and Rachel Zegler. Synopsis: Tony and Maria fall in love during the ever-intensifying war between the Sharks and the Jets, 2 rival gangs vying for control of the streets. Based on the musical West Side Story by Jerome Robbins, Leonard Bernstein, Stephen Sondheim, and Arthur Lawrence.
Yep. So I just want to recap when we did do the original West Side Story. I obviously loved it a lot because I grew up with it. I loved it. Very colorful, beautifully filmed. But I did have a little bit of the qualms with the lip syncing and some of the casting not being 100% authentic. Chad, on the other hand, was not as positive. He felt it was a little bit dated, didn't really vibe with the songs, didn't love the things that I didn't love as well, like the casting and the lip syncing. Wasn't as crazy about the film. He ranked it number 5. I ranked it number 1 of that respective year. Judgment at Nuremberg took our prize that year. But Chad, I will ask you first. I know you like this one better than the original, but how much more do you like this than the original? And has your opinion on West Side Story itself changed? Like, where does this stack up in terms of in comparison to the original and just on its own?
I really, really, really like this film.
Woo-hoo.
I really like the. Okay, I've listened to the original 1961 soundtrack, and I really, really like it a lot. In fact, I think I love it. There's a lot of songs that I'm both sitting there singing all the time, like Maria.
Maria, say it loud and there's music playing.
And stuff like that I just really actually love now. And honestly, I think that still is the detractor from 1961 because it had beautiful music and beautiful lyrics that the film itself was not able to sell me on.
Yeah.
In fact, I think the music was better when you didn't have that movie. Personally, I know you love it, but like for me, and a lot of other people love it, but for me, I think the music away. But then also, I feel like this movie does a lot better of a job of selling the music and selling like everything that it's about so well by casting authentic, people to be who they actually are. And I love that about it.
I was really nervous when I heard that they were remaking it. And I don't love to say remake because it's less of a remake of the film, more of just another adaptation of the musical. So it's an adaptation, but anyway, it is a remake because they're making it again. They're making West Side Story again. And I was nervous because I was like, what else can you bring to it? And I was surprised how wrong I was because Steven Spielberg, he has never made a musical, and it's surprising he hasn't because he is the king of just spectacle-driven blockbusters. Like he coined the term blockbuster with Jaws. He upped the ante with E.T., blew us all away with Jurassic Park, and the Indiana Jones films. Like he is the king of spectacle, and to see, I mean, you could argue James Cameron is now and Denis Villeneuve as well, but like he was the first, he was the father of it. So when this happened, I was like, why has he never made a musical? Because when you see it, it works in his style so well. The grandeur of the musical nature, the staging, the movement of the camera, the way everything is colored and designed, and just the way different scenes weave in and out of one another. There's so many different plots going on, but there's one through line. The romance is beautiful. Like, he should be making musicals for the rest of his life. And he has said in an interview this was his baby and he's not doing another one. Like, this is one and only. I don't know if that was just a way for him to maybe campaign himself for Best Director a little bit more and maybe just get people to be like, well, if he's never making another musical again, let's award him. And he'll maybe come out again later and say, I'm going to do it again. Or he's really done. And that's what we got. But if this is it, I'm very glad it happened because it is a beautiful musical. And I love what he brought to this material to make it new, make it fresh. But I also want to point out Tony Kushner, because what he did with the script was really genius. Taking half the dialogue and making it more authentic to the actual Puerto Rican way of speaking the Spanish language, and also adding dialogue to just kind of give the sharks more identity in the film, and not using subtitles specifically to get the fact that, like, this is life. You hear all this language interspersed with one another, and there are no subtitles in life. And I like that idea of the subtitles themselves being in Spanish because they wanted it to feel as authentic to the actual experience as possible. And I love that. I think the script really elevated this new version a lot. So I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I love I just think because people are able to be authentic in this movie, and you can really feel for them because you feel the two sides of this, where the Puerto Ricans are coming, they're just trying to come and live a life. In fact, you get a whole song about
America,
living in America is great, but it's not so great. But it is so great, but it's not so great.
Right.
And then you get like the other side to it with the Jets, where these people are coming in and they're invading, they're taking over, they're taking over our way of our life, our land. This is where we live, and we're not even doing so great here. We don't have great lives here, and we're trying to just not die and just be we're all messed up and clinically insane and stuff like that. And the way they convey all this with song and dance and just the performances and stuff like that, I just think is so great.
I've always thought just the idea of making Romeo and Juliet, which is that, like, the two rivaling sides, but making it in a context that, like, we as Americans can understand. Because when you read Romeo and Juliet, it's like, that was so long ago when it was written that it's hard sometimes to, like, tap into that reality. That I love just the idea of West Side Story kind of bringing it to a modern lens in general in 1960 when they did it, but especially now even more so. And I like what you said about authentic actors in terms of race, but also authentic in terms of musical ability. Like, Ariana DeBose, a Broadway dancer, is now the second biggest part in this film, or second biggest female part in this film, wins an Oscar after being on Broadway dancing 5 years ago without a single line of dialogue. And now, Rachel Zegler, high school musical theater student, comes to an audition. Steven Spielberg gives her a part. She's now going to be in a Snow White Disney remake, and she's going to be in Shazam 2. She's going to be in a superhero movie. She's already blowing up. And even, like, Mike Feist, who is, like, who I knew for the first time seeing him as Connor in Dear Evan Hansen.
We've been way too out of touch. Things have been crazy, and it sucks that we don't talk that much.
To now see him stealing hearts in this and being such a standout that people are, outraged that he didn't get nominated. Like, it's so nice to see people that I've always admired in my personal field, seeing them get the opportunity to be on the big screen doing what so many actors have been put in. Like, I really like La La Land, but, like, Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling are not natural theater performers. Ryan Gosling more so, and Emma Stone has done theater, but it's like, I'm just imagining what it would have been like with Broadway people in those roles. And, like, I know, anyone can play any role. I get that. Like, whoever's best for the part should play it. But I really like the idea of having people who have lived their whole life to dance, to be dancing in the streets, have lived their whole life singing, to be the one singing these songs. Like, I really like how many people who are musical people playing musical roles. I think that makes all the difference. I think that and In the Heights and Tick, Tick, Boom all had that. And that's why they're all such good musicals and why we got so many good musicals this year. Because I think a lot of the people in those ensembles, not necessarily the leads, but, like, the ensembles of, like, Tick, Tick, Boom and In the Heights and stuff, were all performers who, this is their time to shine, and they definitely made the most of it.
Agree. I think that's really great too. When you can have a transition someone from, musical theater to doing film, and they knock it out of the park, and you can see that they're not just the dancers and singers, that they can actually act and they can actually be brilliant in these.
Yeah.
But I also love the other side to it too, when you have an actor like Ansel Elgort, but also like Andrew Garfield, who can challenge themselves to come from this side to go
Peter
over to
Dinklage
this
too,
side.
and Cyrano. Yeah.
Exactly. Peter
Yeah.
Dinklage was fantastic in that.
Mhm.
And you get to see that these guys are the ones that just act mostly, and then they challenge themselves and, just learn to do all of the choreography and just like actually sing, not lip sync, actually sing. Like, didn't Taron Egerton also do his own singing and stuff like that?
Yeah, he did in Rocketman, and that's why I think that is such a more impactful performance than Rami Malek's in Bohemian Rhapsody, because those are always compared. I think the most authentic you can get it, the better it's going to be. And nowadays, it's in the 60s, maybe there really weren't options. Maybe there were not enough people. You called up an agent, and maybe the agent said, I have 20 white people. I'll give you Natalie Wood. She's not Puerto Rican, but she'll work. Nowadays, you can cast those roles, and that's what's so special about this remake, is like it really goes to show how much this film needed to be remade. I love the original version because I think it's really well done cinematically, but I think in terms of the casting and the performances, like, this beats it by a mile. And I honestly think this is my favorite version of West Side Story, and I'd even go as far as to say it's my favorite version of Romeo and Juliet. And I love the Zeffirelli 60s version, like I really, which we'll get to because it's nominated for Best Picture, but I mean,
the Baz Luhrmann.
It's a timeless tale, and this really is my favorite retelling of it. It really is.
Yeah, same. I mean, obviously, I've took a 180 from really not liking the 1961 that much. It just really wasn't for me. But then I'm so glad that this movie came out, because I was missing a lot of the great music and lyrics that is West Side Story. It's a really great soundtrack. But also, I love Rachel Zegler and Ansel Elgort. I know not a lot of people, because of the stuff, but I'm not going to get into that. I'm just going to talk about the performances because I think they were great, and I loved the Tony Maria in this. I thought it was so well done, especially with the Ariana DeBose, like when, all of the drama between, him killing him, and then like when you come and you're like, oh, this isn't okay. Tony's coming back. He has just murdered her brother, and now
she immediately sleeps with him. But here's the thing: people are getting outraged about it. But Romeo and Juliet, that's exactly what happens in Romeo and Juliet. Romeo kills Juliet's brother, and then or someone from Juliet's family, and then sleeps with her. Like, and that's not realistic, but that's the source material. And honestly, in their lives, maybe they are such lost souls that maybe that is it. Maybe they just feel it right in that moment. Like, and I think this movie does a good job in making their actions justified, even if naturally as humans we are like, it doesn't make a lot of sense to just jump into bed with the guy who killed your brother. But maybe that's the height of the moment and the intensity of the moment. And guess what? It's a fantasy. It's a musical. It's supposed to be a little less realistic than like Lincoln, which is Steven Spielberg's really spot on interpretation of real history. This is Romeo and Juliet. It's a West Side Story. It's a musical.
But it also just goes to show you that love can make you do crazy things. Like, I don't know what to tell you. He was my brother, but I still love him. Like, in fact, even Ariana DeBose comes in and she's like, he killed your brother. You what are you doing? You can't be with him. He just killed your brother. And then she's like, bro, we're one, okay?
And that confrontation with the two of them, the two girls when they're singing, and she's like, a boy like that, and she sings I Have a Love. That to me is the scene of the year for me, because it's my two favorite, and I don't want to tip my hand for my rankings, but I'm going to do it right now. My two favorite performances, female performances of the year, Ariana DeBose and Rachel Zegler, singing together, which I love their voices, but also just having this amazing, standoff after all this drama has ensued. And it feels like the climax. Like, the climax to me is not the rumble. It is this confrontation between Maria, who has just seen her man leave for the last time that she doesn't know, but after her brother died and all that stuff, and then Anita, who just lost the love of her life. It's like she finally has what she wants, and she lost everything she wants, and that clash, and it's so good. I
agree that is probably the best part. And in fact, I think it's so good that the actual ending of this West Side Story, I don't think is amazing. I think if I had to nitpick, I would say like, okay, it ends. I think there's so much in the first like 75% or 85% of it, like that even the ending, I'm like, oh damn it, why did it have to end?
Yeah, I know. And
Yeah.
again, that's just following the source material and
And
being like, well, we have to kill Romeo at the end. But it's interesting that they don't kill Juliet this time. Instead, they have her survive. Or do they? Like, that's up to your interpretation of where does Juliet go from here. I'd love to see what happens in West Side Story 2. I'm joking. I don't want to see what happens. I think this is fine as is. But you know what I
mean. And East Side Story. No, I'm just kidding. And,
East Side Story. It's great.
And I just love also the love at first sight, how they do that in the gym and they go behind the bleachers. Everything kind of fades out. And then they have the dun, 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 dun. I just love all of that. So good.
Yeah, that meeting between the two of them and the music. And I used to love the 60s version where everything kind of like literally blurred around them. But here I kind of like it because it's like just them moving so fast that it almost creates its own natural blur without having to make the actual lens blur. And the lens flare, there's a lot of lens flares in this movie, like where the light just kind of like hits the camera, it flares. There's a little too much of it, but I don't mind it. But in that moment, it's great because they're just kind of circling each other and the whole group is dancing. It's I want to do a commentary for this someday because I love this movie so much. Anyway, we'll talk a little bit more about it in a sec. I promise you. It was nominated for 7 awards, wins 1, wins for Miss Ariana DeBose for Best Supporting Actress, first award of the night, and first award for West Side Story, and unfortunately the last award for West Side Story. But it was nominated for Best Picture, for Best Director for Steven Spielberg, Best Cinematography for Janusz Kaminski, Best Costume Design for Paul Tazewell, Best Production Design, Best Sound, and at the BAFTAs got it right and nominated Mike Feist for Supporting Actor. But we're not talking about the BAFTAs right now. We're talking about the Oscars, and now our awards, where we will rank these films and then pick our number one between the two of us, which might be tough this time because there's 10 movies. And well, I'll try to do the math. Actually, I should probably write it down. And then we will pick our best actor and best actress from these movies. I will go first for actor. You will go first for actress. Let me grab my thing. Okay, I'm just gonna grab this whiteboard just because with 10 movies, I want to be able to write everything.
First for actress.
You're first for actress, yeah, because I took Anne Bancroft from you last time first, so you will get to take actress first. So hold on. I'm just going to write out the numbers. I just want to be ready for this ranking. All right, Chad. I will start because number 10 should be fairly obvious for me. It's Don't Look Up. Right. I just, I've said my piece. What is your number 10?
My number 10 is The Power of the Dog.
Wow, all the way to 10. That's not a wow in terms of like I'm disappointed. Yeah, it's more of a wow in terms of the Oscar frontrunner for most of the season. Is number 10. My number 9 is Belfast.
Wow. Okay. My number 9 is Nightmare Alley.
All right. My number 8 is Nightmare Alley.
My number 8 is Don't Look Up.
All right. My number 7 is King Richard.
My number 7 is King Richard.
All right. We agree on something. My number 6 is Licorice Pizza. My
number 6 is Dune.
Oh, okay. Interesting. That's where I'm giving you my interesting, just like you gave my interesting for Belfast. Yeah. My number 5 is Power of the Dog.
My number 5 is Drive My Car.
All right. My number 4 is the Best Picture winner, CODA.
My number 4 is West Side Story.
Okay. My number 3 is Dune.
My number 3 is Licorice Pizza.
Okay. My number 2 is Drive My Car.
My number 2 is Belfast.
Okay, which means my number 1 is, probably no one's surprised, West Side Story. And Chad's number 1 is?
CODA.
CODA. So here's an interesting thing, Chad. My number 1 is your number 4, and your number 1 is my number 4.
Yes.
So I'm going to see if there's anything commonality. 5 and 2 is Drive My Car, which does not beat 1-4. Belfast wouldn't get it. Dune is a Licorice Pizza. Yeah, we're going to have to flip because CODA and West Side Story are tied, which makes sense because, it's each of our favorite movies. So basically it'll be heads, tails. One of us will win. I think we both like these movies. So whichever one comes out victorious will be, I think, a worthy winner. What were you about to say? You want me to call it? Do you want to flip it?
Hey, Siri.
I'll
Flip
call
a
heads.
coin.
Heads.
Wait, you didn't call it. Call it.
Oh, I called heads. We'll do it again. I'm gonna call
you did?
heads. Yeah, that's fine.
Hey
Do it
Siri,
again.
flip a coin.
It's tails this time.
And that'll do it. CODA wins. I will take it in my heart that West Side Story did technically win since I did call heads, but you didn't hear it, and I want to be fair. So I did call heads after that, and it was tails. I should have known Siri would just go the other way, but after that, and I'm fine with this because the Academy agreed as well.
Replay back the tape.
No,
You're sure?
no. Because honestly, I am fine with either of these winning. And I will admit, before I rewatched these, my number 1 was West Side Story. My number 2 was Dune, and my 3 was CODA. Drive My Car was 4. On rewatch, Drive My Car moved up to 2. So technically, before I watched it again, CODA was at 3, and now it's at 4. So technically, I did have CODA higher. So I will concede to CODA because I do think if we had done this a week ago before I rewatched them, CODA would have won because it would have been my 3 in year 1. So I'm fine with CODA winning. Our best picture for 2021 is CODA. Also the best picture of the Academy. Chad's very happy about that. And that will join these 12 films: Wizard of Oz, Double Indemnity, Miracle on 34th Street, Judgment, Nuremberg, The Graduate, The Sting, Jaws, The Elephant Man, Shawshank Redemption, There Will Be Blood, Moneyball, and Nomadland as the 13th best picture chosen for us. So now we pick our best actors and our best actresses. After CODA and West Side Story had that amazing duel, let's see if we're going to have any agreements or disagreements here. Chad, I will pick my best actor first.
Okay.
And I hate to do this because I think this might have been where you were leaning, but I'm going to go with the man who won the Oscar. He was part of the best picture. It is Troy Kotsur for CODA. I think that moment at the back of the car is beautiful. In any other year, and the Pickle Awards, I separated it by year. So technically Judas and the Black Messiah was this year. So Daniel Kaluuya did beat him out, but if he had not been in the race, Troy Kotsur definitely would have been my pick at the Pickle Awards for Best Supporting Actor. So I figured I would award him here because this is a good time to mention him. And he did give a beautiful performance. He's the reason I love that movie so much. So I'm going to go with Troy Kotsur for CODA. Who is your pick for Best Actor, Chad, of these 10?
Yeah, for Best Actor, actually, I had Troy Kotsur in kind of a runner-up phase because I knew you probably were going to go that way. So I said I wanted to go Cooper Hoffman in Licorice Pizza.
Nice.
I thought
Interesting
Cooper
pick.
Hoffman was excellent in this. I think he did his father proud, his late father proud. And I loved this movie. Does not work so well, for people who think it works well. This movie does not work so well if Cooper Hoffman is not the way he is in this movie. He's just such chemistry, just like the sequence when they're driving in that big U-Haul thing, and then he's like gonna go.
So good.
He's like, I'm gonna rebel and I'm gonna go beat the shit out of that guy's car because he was nasty to me, and I'm a big man and I'm gonna go do this. And then they run out of gas and then they gotta reverse, and it's just a great scene. And I just love everything, all of his little ventures, the soggy bottom, water beds,
which was the original title for the movie, if we remember correctly. Yeah, right. Soggy Bottom was supposed to be the title.
I like that though. Pinball Palace, just everything with him, just trying to, just this back and forth with, Bradley Cooper, with Barbara Streisand, and it's it's just he's just doing it like a pro, and hasn't really been in much that I've seen. I think he's kind of
I think he's very early. He actually, it's funny because there's a picture of him with his dad when his dad won the Oscar. At the Academy Awards. I don't know if it was the year he won the Oscar, but it was the year he was nominated. It was either that or The Master or Capote. I don't remember, but he was with his dad in the audience as a kid, and now there was a side by side of him now at the Oscars as an adult or an older kid, which is great.
I think he's amazing, and I think when he can get into a role that's not as divisive and people freak out about it, then he's gonna have a similar career, I think.
Yeah,
as his father.
So your best actress first. I almost spoiled mine. Go ahead, Chad, for best actress.
My best actress is Amelia Jones from CODA.
Wow, nice.
I have this fire in me that's burning that I am pissed off that she did not get a nomination. This was a huge snub for me. I don't think it was an Academy snub or anything like that, but for me, it's a personal one.
Yeah, she got
Because
nominated
I
for the
feel like-
BAFTA, so she was on the radar. Yeah.
Exactly. And I feel like she had so much that she did for this movie, selling it, marketing it, but then also preparing for it. She had to learn sign language. She had to do vocal lessons. She's British and she did a perfect like American whatever accent.
It's very impressive.
And she just does this so well. The scene where she has to simultaneously sing and then start signing, it's so beautiful and so brilliant. I just love
Really good
all of
performance.
the little moments with her that she conveys in the movie. She's just it's just a great coming of age tale with her. She just does everything in this movie perfectly. The scene between her and Marley Matlin, she just handles everything so well. Just signing angrily and stuff like that is just it's just beautiful. And I love her adaptation of Joni Mitchell's Both Sides Now because, like I said, I have it on play all the time. Oh my God, I freaking love Amelia Jones. So,
Chad's gonna go watch CODA after this for the millionth time. But yeah, I love that performance too. It's a great one, and I'm glad that. What? Alana Haim was your backup?
Alana Haim, yeah.
I'll tell you.
You're not picking her.
What? I'm not picking her.
Yeah.
I'm picking someone from West Side Story. It is my favorite performance, hands down, of the year. Actor, actress, male, female, anything. My favorite performance of last year, Ariana DeBose, West Side Story. What she brought to that role, from the singing. No. I'm going from the dancing to the Rachel Zegler was great. She was my backup, but the dancing, acting, but those moments at the end where she's crying and she's saying I am a Puerto Rican, or in Spanish, she's like,
Yo no soy americana. Yo soy puertorriqueña.
She has that moment to Rita Moreno. She's saying this to Rita Moreno, which also is a great legacy moment. Just that deep monologue at the end, but also just that moment where they reveal Bernardo's corpse in the morgue, and you just see her break down into tears. She says nothing, but in that single moment, the first time I saw it, and I like this movie a lot more every time I watch it, but the first time I saw it, wasn't crying yet for the rumble or anything like that. As soon as she sees his face and starts crying, I started crying, and I didn't stop till the credits. And I think that's just a testament to her power and her acting. And I love Rachel Zegler too. I think she's really, really great. But Ariana DeBose just had even more of a fire in her. I think that's also because Rachel Zegler has to play more of the sweet ingenue, whereas Ariana DeBose has a little bit more grit and fire in her role herself. Like Rita Moreno made this role famous for a reason. Ariana DeBose is continuing the legacy for a reason. So she is my best actress pick. I really, really love her performance. It was my favorite of the year. Andrew Garfield was a close second of the year. And then, of course, Rachel would be third. But I really think Ariana DeBose. No, I know. That's why I'm sad Tick Tick Boom wasn't nominated, because that would have been hands down my winner pick for best actor. But yeah, I loved Ariana DeBose. So best picture, settled by the coin toss, was CODA. I will say our best picture runner-up was West Side Story. Chad's best actor was Cooper Hoffman for Licorice Pizza. My best actor was Troy Kotzer for CODA. Chad's best actress was Amelia Jones for CODA, and my best actress was Ariana DeBose for West Side Story. Great films, great performances. I don't know what else to say. Any last words on this year, 2021, before we tease the next year?
Great year. I really hope this year is great. It's going off to a great start. I've loved Scream. I've loved a lot of these movies that have been coming out. The Batman was fantastic, in my opinion. And I just can't wait to see what we get next, because I'm sure it's going to be a lot of great stuff. And hopefully this movie can be a little less dramatic this time next year. But
so moving on to next month, we're going to tease next month, and we've been talking about how we want to do for our birthdays, we want to do years that we were born or whatever. And obviously, unfortunately, Chad, his birthday is in the month that the Oscars happen. So next year we are going to have his birthday celebration right after the Oscars or right before the Oscars, depending on how it falls out, because his year is also tacked on to a certain trilogy that we're doing next year, because Godfather Part 3 came out the year your birthday was. But my birthday's next month, so we are going to be doing my birth year for April of this year, and we are doing 1998, which, we're going to continue the trend of years where just the front runner was a front runner for a long time and then lost to the underdog. And this year it was Power of the Dog, lost to CODA. Next year it was a certain Spielberg film that lost to a certain film campaigned by a nasty guy who was expelled from the Academy that we will not mention by name. But But the rest of the films in that slate, if you know the two we were talking about, I will announce the full slate right now. The films of 1998, it's only 5, so it's going to be a shorter episode next time, and that is Elizabeth, Life is Beautiful, Saving Private Ryan, Shakespeare in Love, the eventual winner, and The Thin Red Line. Chad has seen most of these movies. I have seen a few of them. I have a few blind spots here and there. I've seen 3, so I am very excited.
And I'm very
to talk about
excited
these
for
movies.
you to finally see The Thin Red Line, because I
Right.
know that you kind of sort of love Terrence Malick. Let's see how you think about that one.
Yeah, I've only seen 2 Terrence Malick films. Didn't like one, love the other one. So Tree of Life is so good. Didn't win our pick. It was Moneyball, but still a very good year. Very good pick. But 1998, it'll be a little birthday celebration. Coming up in April, I might as well tease what's happening in April. We are going to be covering Moon Knight on Marvelous Movie Mondays, which will be exciting every week. And then on Frame Rec for 420, we are doing Reefer Madness. And then here on Picture This, we are doing 1998. And we are starting the first ever episode of Draft Day, which Chad will be on with me, as well as other hosts from the show, Matt, Kelsey, and Zach. And the 5 of us will be doing our first inaugural draft, which is a Disney draft. I might specify it to Disney Animation just because a lot of people have reached out saying, I want to do a Disney draft. And I'm like, well, I kind of want this to be just the 5 hosts to kind of get a feel of what the show's going to be before I start having guests on. But maybe we're going to do a Pixar draft online, Disney Animation, live action, anything. So this might just be Disney Animation. We'll figure it out. But that is going to be happening soon. That Chad will be on. So like a lot of exciting things happening in April as we enter the second wave of the Dill Pickle Movie Network. And, we're already at a year of this. We've done this for a whole year. I want to just try to figure out how many movies. So wait, 10 for 1939, right? 10. I'm going to try to do this on a calculator. Hold on. I don't want to do this off the cuff. But 1939 was 10 movies. I'm going to do it. 10 movies. Double Indemnity. That year was 5. Next 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 year, I believe 2011 was how many? 8 or 9?
I don't remember.
I think it was 9. Let's just say 9. 2020 was 8 plus 10 we did tonight. We have hit roughly, let's say 81 to 83, because the number I got was 82. So let's say 81 to 83 movies we have covered on this show in the span of a year. That's pretty amazing. That's pretty exciting. And, this was a 3-hour special, not just to acknowledge the Oscars and the 10 films nominated, but also to celebrate a year of this show. And I'm very grateful, of course, always to you, Chad, for being aboard the journey. And just, it was 9. So yeah, I think 82 we've hit. But really, really grateful to you for just agreeing to do this and wanting to do this so open arms and exciting. And just being a good sport. I know we've disagreed at times. You ranking West Side Story low, me ranking Belfast and Promising Young Woman low, but then again, us being celebratory of the things we ranked higher, like West Side Story, like CODA, like Drive My Car, Licorice Pizza. Like, I'm very excited whenever we talk about great movies. So thank you so much, Chad, for being along for the ride.
And I'm really glad that this idea that we had just kind of like took off. And it's working so well. And I have so much fun celebrating these movies, watching these movies. Agreeing and disagreeing is also very fun because it's great dialogue that we have. And we're learning how to communicate and, just share our love for film. And this is just so
and learning
fun.
to be better critics also.
Yeah. And I look forward to this every month. So I'm looking forward to another great year of doing this with you and having a blast watching these films. I do have a question. Which Reefer Madness? Is it the one with Kristen Bell?
I think the original, like the old one. But I don't know. Maybe I'll watch both.
Because I love the one with Kristen Bell. It's very funny.
The 2005 one? I think it's... Oh, it's not the movie musical. That's the one. It's the original from the 30s. But I'm going to watch the movie musical in prep for it, so it's going to be fun.
You probably will love it.
Yeah, just like the Hulk. It might get a little green when we do it, but it'll be fun. And Chad, I love your shirt there. Halloween. We will get to some horror movies eventually in October, but that's a little way down the line. But we have some really fun stuff, exciting stuff planned, including, I can tease it now, but in the midst of the summer, we will be starting our Lord of the Rings trilogy years, where we will do 2001, 2002, and 2003 back to back to back. So you guys can just have 3 whole months of Lord of the Rings and Chicago and A Beautiful Mind and all those other things. But yeah, Moulin Rouge. But yeah, like Lord of the Rings is coming this summer, so I'm very excited for it. I'll be watching both the theatrical and extended editions in prep for that because I just love those movies. Maybe not all in those months, but maybe I'll like pre-plan. I don't know. Anyway, we've rambled on a long time. Chad, really quickly tell everyone where they can find you.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it short. I do trivia, I do debate, I do this show with you. I do my own channel, Chadwick Webb. We rank stuff. Check it out. I host a horror thing with my buddy Hunter and my wife Carrie, and we have great conversations there. We did a big season 1 of Buffy thing over at the Nerd Entertainment Network. It's called Welcome to Prime Time. It's a
Nice.
Dream Warriors
Yeah.
but Hunter's watching it just like Dylan is watching Buffy and loving it, and I'm so excited to hear new people get into the show that I adore so much. And Hunter is diving through it, and I'm so excited to talk to people about it. But yeah, anyways, thank you, Dill. This was great. Love it.
Yeah, you can find me everywhere else. You can find me on this channel. It's going to be fun. I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you next time for 1998. Great year in cinema. Great year for people who were born that year, aka me. But, Chad was how old? 8? It'll be a fun time. See you next time.